Hey, Bill, I'm just gonna stop the recording for now till we get everyone here because they don't edit it at all. Um, I don't know if you're there, but no big deal if you're not. Just telling you, I will restart it because otherwise everybody sits there waiting for like scrolling and trying to figure out when the meeting actually starts. So, okay. All right, looks like we're getting everyone here. I'm going to go ahead and start the recording. Oh, I guess it was going. I thought I had paused it. Sometimes it's hard when you have to wait several minutes and everyone's searching through the YouTube trying to figure out when it actually starts. So welcome everybody. Hi, Katie, Ken, everyone's connecting. I know we will be down Cavan today. Hoping we'll have Khadija join us.
I'm on, Alana.
Hello. All right. Well, let's get started. Oh, there she is. Excellent. It's 7:01. So good evening, everyone. I'm Alana Gustafson, the chair of the Maynard Finance Committee, calling our meeting to order at 7:01. First, I want to let everyone know that this meeting is being recorded, so please take care not to screen share anything that you don't want captured in the recording. And also, all votes this evening will be taken by a roll call vote. And I just need to confirm that all members on the agenda are present and can participate via Zoom. So Ken, I'll start with you.
Yes.
Katie.
Yes.
Peter.
Yes.
Jillian.
Yes.
Khadija.
Yes.
Hello. And we have with us for guests, we have Captain Lawless here. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me.
And Bill.
Hi there.
Bill Coleman, chair of the Charter Review Committee. Okay, so let's get started. First item on the agenda is a budget discussion with the Maynard Fire Chief, as we had similar discussion with the police chief and the DPW director. We try to meet around this time of year with all of our department heads, see what is going on with their budgets, their departments, their concerns. And I want to say, first of all, congratulations, Chief Lawless. It's wonderful to have you with us. I was on the select board meeting when you had the final interview. It was a really informative process. I thought it was well done, and I think they made absolutely the right call. So welcome, and thank you for your continued service.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Chief Lawless sent a budget document. I'm going to go ahead and share that, and then we can start our discussion.
Hopefully you will be kind to me, as this is my first one. I'm not quite sure what your expectations are, but I will do my best.
Absolutely. No. Hopefully we can set your mind at ease. The budget document, this template was created a few years ago, and it's just sort of a jumping off point for discussions. Sometimes it's easier just to go through some of the basics.
So Alana, could I just
Yeah.
interject?
Yeah.
Chief, the main reason why we do this traditionally is the purpose of the finance committee is to make recommendations to town meeting voters. And so rather than relying completely on the select board and the town administrator and so forth for information, we often go out directly to the department heads, particularly the larger department heads, such as yourself, Chief Noble, Justin DeMarco, and so forth, so that we can understand directly from you sort of what the compelling factors are. So,
Okay.
you know, our attempt here is not so much to evaluate what your recommendation is, as it is to explain it and make recommendations to town meeting voters.
Great.
Sorry, Alana. I just
That's
wanted.
okay.
No,
No,
I appreciate the explanation, because I did the best I could with, but you know, I'm coming in a little late to the budget, and some of this process is brand new. So we'll just work through it together, I guess. So
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds good. So you can see everyone, the mission statement and the vision statement of the Maynard Fire Department. And then one thing we generally look at, especially in terms of budget, is FTEs or full-time equivalents for staffing. So this was interesting. Chief, it looks like the FY23 is quite different. Is that, oh, because that's just because we're midway. Okay, I
Yeah,
see what you're doing. So
I
that was
tried to-
the,
Yeah, I tried to divide it out to where we were
right, okay.
as of today, just,
That makes sense. And then, if you want to talk about anything in terms of staffing, how you feel the department is staffed. I know
Sure.
you're just getting used to your new duties, but you know, how you think staffing levels are, what's working, what's not.
yeah. So the first thing that I talked about was a deputy chief position. This has been something that I know that Chief Stower's been kind of trying to plant that seed for a few years unsuccessfully to this point. And I have spoken to Greg about that and realized that it's probably not going to be something that's accepted in the budget this year. But there's a lot of voids that we're just unable to complete in the fire department. And to the betterment of the whole organization and what we can do for the community, having that position filled could get rid of some of those voids. A perfect example of that is our fire prevention program. So we used to be able to go into buildings as a group all the time and do like safety inspections and really kind of catch things before they were a problem, be more proactive than reactive in the fire service. Which is obviously a goal of ours. And since our call volume's up about 30% over the last few years, that task has almost been neglected completely. And that's just kind of a recipe for disaster further on. Like, we'd really like to try to address that. And we do try to divide it out to give that to the groups, but it's very difficult to walk into a building to initiate an inspection and then to get called out on a run. So that's
Mhm.
one of the things that we're working on. Some of the other options of a deputy chief is at some point, we're going to really need to examine going to an advanced life support service. Right now, we run a basic life support ambulance service. And we are going to need to at least entertain the idea of how to transition into that position in the future. A deputy chief position could really help take that project on, and because it's going to be a full-time job for a while to figure out how to make that transition. So that's something that, we could put under that hat.
Could you explain, for those that might not know, the difference
Yeah,
between
I'm
those two
sorry.
services?
Yeah, so what we do now, how we run as a basic life support is, we're able to do certain amount of calls. And what I mean is, depending on what the category is. So, I don't know, like your general falls and just general basic ambulance calls we can handle on our own. But if it requires a paramedic, so that would be like a trauma, a difficulty breathing, a stroke, a cardiac event, some of what we would consider more serious calls, if that's a right way of putting it. We
Mhm.
rely on a company called Pro ALS, and they intercept from us. So they have their base in Acton, and they service the communities around us. So they service Concord, Acton's now does their own ALS. They service Stowe, Carlisle, things. So they have an SUV that comes and meets us, and they're able to
Mm.
provide a higher standard of care. So obviously the betterment for the town is that there's not that delay. The system does work now, but it's definitely, as the call volume goes up for us, it also goes up for all of our communities. So therefore, we're starting to see some availability issues, that they're not always as accessible as we would like. It would, it's just a void in service that we'd like to avoid. The other part of ALS that if we could go there would be some obviously higher costs to our town, but also the income difference, the revenue that we would get being able to provide that own service. in a absolute perfect world, if all the stars were aligned and we were said, yes, let's do this today, we're looking at about a 3-year transition time. So this isn't something we want to wait a long time. It's something we really need to start considering for our community, because it's going to take a while to train the staff, get the equipment, get the licensing, upgrade all of our availability, all that stuff. So it's not something that can be done overnight.
So that basically brings your care from an EMT level to a paramedic level? Is that-
Exactly.
Okay,
Yes. And in order to care for a paramedic level, we would need to have 2 paramedics on per day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So,
and so the cost you mentioned incurring to the town would be that presumably those paramedics would be a higher paid staff than an EMT level, but
yes,
they would also, the calls would also generate more
exactly.
revenue.
And in the beginning, we would have to, make the decision. This would be part of the feasibility study that I would think it's, a deputy chief could really tackle, but we would have to consider, do we train our own? Are we hiring outside? It is a challenge right now for fire departments everywhere to get paramedics. They're very short amount of them for a very high demand job. So other costs that we would incur, our ambulances would stay the same, but the equipment we have inside of them would have to be increased to meet a paramedic standard. So there's a lot of pieces to that, and
Okay,
that would be a whole big.
Can I chime in, Alana?
sure, go ahead.
Chief, welcome, thank you. Specifically on that, I think it would be very helpful to have some concrete numbers about, how many advanced life calls are there, what's the average response time, and, what are the outliers that we're concerned about. I mean, I have to say, my initial thought on this is, of course, this is something that should be regionalized, that thinking that every town does this for themselves just, fiscally doesn't seem to make sense immediately to me. So,
So yes and no.
I think it would be good to have some good numbers.
Yeah, so we were more regionalized a few years ago. So Sudbury they've transitioned in the last probably 2 to 3 years, and Acton has also. So they were in on that same region that we used before, but their call volume was at a point that they needed to make this transition on their own. I do know that Concord at this time is doing their feasibility study. My fear is that if Concord pulls out from what we call the Samara group, which is that region, exactly what you're discussing, that there's not a lot of buy-in for Pro to stay in our area. And I would hate to have a reactive stance to that opposed to proactive, because like I said, it's going to take a few years to transition. And if that company or other companies aren't interested in just handling us and Stowe, then we would be stealing, or not stealing, we would be utilizing a lot of our mutual aid resources, and really, that would really take down on their ability to give their town care.
What about regionalizing with other towns?
Well, that's
Why
what we
can't
do
pay
now.
Acton?
That's
If we were more formal about it, and as opposed to a mutual aid, which I understand an imbalance would be a problem, where we were said, we want to give you $200,000 a year. This is all speculation. I don't mean to
I know.
go with
So
that.
I can
We can
give
talk
you a little
about
bit of the numbers. I can give you a little bit of the numbers. So last year, and I mean, there's a few, numbers after it, but we did about 1,100 EMS calls specifically.
Okay, I'm sorry. I don't think it. I'm sorry. I don't know that we should go through it right now.
Okay.
As we talk about this in the future, I'm sorry. I just don't want to derail the whole call and get.
I get
into depth.
I get it. But we
sorry,
do
Alana,
utilize
That's
now.
okay.
No, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
But I think as we talk about this, it would be good to have something written about statistics and what the high number for a weight is too. would be
Right,
the
I,
other thing.
I
Right.
do have that
Right.
available, so we can deal with that later. I'm sorry if I went
Okay.
off on a tangent.
No, that's okay.
That's fine. I asked a question too in
All
depth
right.
probably, but
Before we continue, I see Katie's hand up. I'm gonna let her go ahead and ask her
Yeah,
question.
I just had a question about revenue from the services. Does that come from billing insurance companies for the services?
All of the above, yes.
Okay.
So ALS calls, so the contract we have now with Pro is that if it's a Medicare patient transfer, then we get a flat fee that we get total. And that flat fee is about $250 a transport. If it's a non-Medicare patient, then Pro gets 100% of the revenue. Even though we do the transporting. So there is a lot of possibility to increase our revenue there. But initially it would be a pretty steep investment.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
And welcome.
Thank you. I'm sorry if I went off on that tangent, but that was trying to just
Yeah,
explain the deputy chief position, what we could
absolutely.
do.
So anything else on staffing? What, in terms of like
Well,
the
I
captain
did-
rotation? And I saw that we have an acting captain who has taken because you were a captain,
Correct. So
So-
we're having a captain process with I think June 8th will be the beginning of the promotional process for that. And within the next month or so, I also will have to hire a firefighter, at least one, to replace whoever becomes captain. There'll be an empty
Right.
firefighter spot. So that's in the plan, and that'll get us back up to that 21.5.
Okay, and I know at least for the police department, a lot of times hiring a new police officer means then sending them to the academy. Is that similar with the fire department? Do we pay for that training, or how does it work in the fire department?
So in our contract, we have that I can send somebody to the academy, but a contract, maybe 2 contracts ago, we took away that it's mandatory that every single person goes to the academy. At some point, I would like to change that because I think that's a little bit of a disservice to our whole organization. But when you get hired at our department, we expect that you are certified to an EMT basic and you have firefighter 1 and 2, which is something that you get at the academy and recruit school. So we're trying to get people that have already gone through some of the training through a call volunteer department. And then when they come into us, we try to give them an in-house bridging program to get them up to where we'd like them to be. We're finding that to be a little challenging based on our call volume and our availability to train. Like, we don't have a burn building and all of the things and the resources that you get at the academy. But we're doing the best we can.
Okay,
So capital projects we talked about, I put this on here. I think this is all settled with you guys, but I wasn't exactly sure how that went, but we have purchased a new engine to replace our old engine 1, which is about 21 years old. That has been ordered. And I think Greg is working on the financing on that. He asked me a question about that today, but that was done before I got here, so I don't know
Okay.
if I have all those answers. If you have any. I also know that Chief Stowers had on our capital plan the purchase of a new command car. And as I understood that I thought that was going to be covered with ambulance receipts, but Greg ironically sent me a message after I had done this today, and I think that he has that covered under free cash. You guys would know that more than
Okay.
I would. I also put in here things that you probably also have, which are in the capital plan that Chief Stowers had done in before. There's 15,000 for portable radio upgrades and replacements. That, as I understand it, would be between us and the police. And it would be if there's opposed to having the big payment for radios that we had done a few years ago. That was, let's see, it was about 35,000. The idea was to divide that in half and spread that out over a few years, so it wasn't all at once. So that's what that is in there. And then we need to do our radio box software replacement and upgrades coming up this year, and we're working with the communications department to do that. So that's what that piece is. But again, I'm not 100% versed on the vendor and all of that.
Okay.
Then we talked about the SCBA's or the Scott packs that we have. This I just pulled forward from Chief Stowers. He had put that in last year, just letting you know that that's coming up in a few years. We don't even have a committee or something at this point set to test which option we're gonna go with. I think that's just that's coming kind of.
Okay.
And a lot of times too, that can be obtained with grants. That's something that's usually covered in grants.
I'm gonna let Ken go ahead. I see his hand raised.
Just a quick question. So what is the command car used for?
So that's the car that, like, anytime there's the chief takes that to do any and all appointments, inspections. It's got equipment in there. If there's a fire, that's where the command center is. If you're familiar with like the incident command system, the person that's in command, there's like the giant board that's in there that you do your safety, your accountability, your staging, you're fulfilling all of those pieces to kind of give the fire ground overall safety for the firefighters and the citizens. So all of that equipment is in there. And that goes to the fire.
So, so I would guess that the command car gets relatively less usage than, say, like a police car does.
Yes, it doesn't drive around all day for sure. It is the car that I use to go back and forth, and it stays with me at this point at all times. Obviously, I don't use it for personal use, just going back and forth to work, or if there was a fire in our community or any of our mutual aids, 24 hours, 24/7, that car would go there.
So if, so if a citizen in town meeting said, well, why don't we just, take one of the old police cars that we're replacing and use that for the chief command car, what would our answer be?
That wouldn't really work unless it was like an SUV police car, maybe. Because it's got, as you open up the back, it's got like a, I don't know how you'd put it, like there's a big section that comes out on wheels and boards come up, and your radios are all attached in there, and there's the mobile data, there's a lot of specific equipment that works on a fire scene, but wouldn't be the same as a police car.
Okay. And so how many years does a command car last?
So the one that we have now is about 11 years old.
Okay, so that answers that. Thank you. That's very helpful.
I also think, or I would recommend that the one that we have now, we would keep that into our fleet. We currently use what is our brush truck for firefighters that need to go out and do similar errands, inspections. The captains use it for inspections. That puts a lot of wear and tear on our brush truck. That's not necessary. So, if there was a possibility of keeping that piece opposed to turning it in, that would be a better use of the original command car.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, any other capital questions? I'll have a quick one. Chief, is there anything in the new fire station that so far has been identified as, perhaps not quite what we thought or was expected? Or is there anything that, now that you guys are in there and you've used it a
Yeah.
bit, is everything, what you all needed?
So that's a tough question because we're not done yet.
Okay.
So let me explain, like, there's some issues with the radiant heat on our apron. So where the fire engines come out, there's a giant cement pad right there that has heat underneath it that melts the snow and ice before it's an issue, because there's not really any way to plow it the way that it is. So that was designed that way. There's some issues with the concrete itself. Like there's some excessive cracking and some like some chunks are coming out. But that's all under warranty, and that's warranted for a year. So we're just letting it go until spring, when all of the ice and snow is done, and then they're going to come in and fix that. So it's covered by warranty, but it's not exactly where we want it to be yet.
Mhm.
There's another piece in the apparatus floor that we're building a training mezzanine. So that project isn't even starting until May. And that will last 6 months. So those are two examples of pretty big things that I can't answer that question to yet, because they're not at completion. We do have weekly meetings with the construction company and the architects and all of that, and we have a pretty big punch list. Everybody's being really proactive, getting everything where it needs to be. And we're currently in the process of being tested or trained on all of the systems that the department has. Like everything's new, the sprinkler, how we fill our tanks, how we turn on and off the lights, all of it needs to be trained on, and we're working on that now.
Okay.
Overall, though, great space, and we're looking forward to really.
It's definitely an upgrade, that's for sure.
I mean,
Even-
I personally have no complaints at all. It's a beautiful building, and I can't wait to make it really home. We just
Mm.
gotta finish some of the moving pains, right, that you have with
Yeah.
every new thing. Yeah. Which actually brings you to the next point that you just scrolled down on.
Mm.
I really have zero idea of what the cost of the facility will be compared to our old department.
Mhm.
The theory on it, and why when I kind of worked on the budget with Chief Stowers and left everything kind of the same, is our old building was so inefficient. And the new building, although it's bigger, in theory, it should be very efficient. So we kind of guessed that maybe the utilities and stuff would work out to be similar. But until we really move in and, you know,
Mhm.
we don't even have the HVAC system all the way at operation currently. So it's hard to tell where that's going to fall in the heat and in the cold.
Mhm. All right, and then some budget challenges.
Yeah, so again, this is just something that Chief Stowers had in there before, and not that has not changed. Our call volume is going up. There's a huge impact from Digital Way, and somewhere down the future, we're going to have to probably add at least one more staffing person per group. It would be probably the wisest move if that was done in correlation with transitioning to being paramedics, so that we could bring in those people as the new positions.
Mhm.
But that's in the future. Another challenge we're having is our fleet work. This past year, we had, I believe, 25,000 was budgeted for maintenance of the fleet. And in like the first month of the fiscal year, we exceeded that with one of our engines. So there's been some repairs that we haven't expected, some breakdowns that we had to get repaired. This year, we put in an increase to increase that 25,000 to 30,000. And I had our fleet manager sit down and kind of go over all of the work that's still left to be done on our fleets that we know needs to be done. And that number for all of the pieces that we have does come right below 30,000. So as long as we don't have any unexpected issues, we should be okay, but I just wanted to kind
Mhm.
of run that by you so that you understood that was some of our challenges.
Absolutely. Ken, I think I saw your hand go up. Do you have a question?
Yeah, so you said that much of the increase is attributed to Digital Way project. Have you done any assessment on what those calls are? Where they're
Yeah,
coming
so-
from?
Yeah, I couldn't give you the exact number, but from being the captain on duty and now being the chief, I can tell you that most of them come from, Camilla Gardens, and they're mostly medicals. Our fire calls have not been increased that much from there. There's been a few issues with alarm systems and things that have maybe had some inadvertent alarms that have gone off for fire, but really the increase is medicals.
Yeah, I remember when the project came, before the planning board, there was some discussion about the impact on increased, medical calls and stuff like that, but it was dismissed at the time as, not likely to lead to a significant increase, but, going up 30% certainly sounds like a pretty big increase to me. Have we looked at the overall increase? So the pace here that you're talking about is a 30% increase over a single year. So if we looked at sort of the number of calls prior to Digital Way project being in existence versus now.
Yeah, so that 30%, I didn't mean to mislead you from that. That's increase from fiscal year 21 to now.
Okay.
So not 1 year, it's built up over a couple of years since that
Okay,
facility has been open.
okay, thank you. Thank
Yep.
you for clarifying that.
Mm,
And then the last item on this section, the training budget.
Yes, so our training budget, last year when that was put in, and please forgive me if I misspeak a little bit because I don't 100% understand how the process works, but he proposes a budget and then it comes back with some different numbers is how I understand.
Mhm.
Okay, so Chief Stowers had budgeted the 25,000 for our training budget, and it was reduced when it came back to the 15,000. We are currently over that a little bit, in about 18,000, but we still have some more training that needs to be done this year. Now, the biggest piece of that is what we're required for our state certification to run an ambulance. We require to have, all of our members have to have EMS credits of, it's 21 hours per year for each person. So we bring in a vendor to do that education piece, but that each class is run 4 times over 1 month. So that's an expense of about 12 to 13,000 a year. So that leaves very little money for extra drills that we need to do. One, for instance, is the Asher drills that we've been working on funding. And as of this year too, they've just started the Nero's Law. So that sucked that all up before we even got done what was required as a state. So we really need to be conscious that we do the best we can to fund that line item so that we can get the training that we need.
Okay, I think that's it for the document. Thank you very much for that. And are there any other questions from committee members about Maynard Fire Department and what they're doing these days?
I'll just add my words of welcome to you. Thank you for continuing to serve our community, and thank you for coming tonight and providing the information.
It was my pleasure. I was hoping I did a service to the department and answered the questions as you as you expected.
No, you did absolutely. And it is a learning process for all of us. And we thank you for your honesty and your answers. And we hope that moving forward, we'll see what happens with the deputy position and other things. Obviously, budgets are tight and staff is expensive, but we hear you and the need, and we thank you for letting us know.
The good thing about the fire departments, we'll do our best to get it done.
I love the go-to attitude. And
that I have.
and good luck with getting all settled into the new station. It's a really, from what we've seen, we've had a couple meetings there now. It's a wonderful addition to the town, and I believe there's still some more to come in terms of potentially solar panels on the roof and things. So there's still quite a bit to be
It's
to be
still a
done.
work
And
in progress.
yeah, exactly.
Yes, and if I left anything out or you have any follow-up questions or I just didn't make sense, please feel free to reach out with me. I'll be happy to meet with any of you individually or answer emails, whatever you need.
Okay, we appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Have a good night. All right, so that brings us to the second item on our agenda, which is the town charter annual town meeting warrant articles now, which are coming about because the Charter Review Committee, which has been in place for a year and a half.
Almost 2 years. We started
Almost 2
April,
years.
What was it, 2021?
Yeah.
So this coming April will be 2 years, but we basically had finished our work end of October, beginning of November, because we had a due date of turning in our report and the changes 6 months prior to annual town meeting. So
Great. So first of all, thank you, Bill, for chairing that committee and for everyone that served on it. It's quite a charge to be given to update the charter, and I know it was a thorough and long process, and I have to say I was really impressed with the work that you all did, reading over everything. I love the red line item and the way that you had laid it out. It made it so easy to, read your report about how you did it and then go through the redlined and the corrected look of everything. And it just made it really easy to digest. So
that was our intent. I'm glad it actually worked.
Yeah, I thought it was great. So thank you so much for that. I had a couple of, I don't know what the best way to go about the discussion. I had a couple of questions going through it myself.
Yeah, however you want to do it. It's just basically just to say to the committee that rather than me droning on for 9 pages of our report or 35 pages of the markup topic copy, I asked Alana to relay to you that, the documents that we had presented to the town clerk for you to read through, have your questions. So however you wanted, if you just wanted to take it in turn and we go through it, I have hard copies in front of me that I can refer to. I also can pull up on my screen as well if we need to. But yeah, go ahead with the questions. I'll be happy to answer if I can.
Okay. I also have, I think I have the red line copy ready to go for referral. And hold on, before I do that though, let me just pull up my personal questions. And remind myself. Okay. Pull that back up again. Pardon me, so many windows. So first of all, I want to point out a couple of things pertaining, because, selfishly pertaining to the Finance Committee. I was very happy to see the change with regards to the need for Finance Committee members to resign immediately should they pull papers to run for another office or another appointment, changed to now they can stay on the Finance Committee until elected or appointed.
Yes.
That was something that I was really hoping would be changed. I think that is just less disruptive to the process. As we all know, it can be very disruptive to have, people leaving suddenly. And it's quite a long process from the pulling of papers in a town election to the actual election to actually taking office. There's months in there. And so I think that's really helpful to be able to allow our committees to continue functioning as they would with that.
Yeah,
So
we had a bit of discussion on that going back and forth. And the thing is, and let me just make sure I mention the people. Members on our review committee were Luann Kataya, Sally Bouvier, Bill Cranshaw, who all were previously on Finance Committee. And I think actually Bill was mentioned that he did resign to, and I forget whether he was running for something or was put his name in to be appointed to something, didn't get it, and just said, well, okay, I'm done with it, and just kind of walked away. Where part of our discussion was that, well, a person who does that could be asked to be reappointed back to the committee, but it seems like that doesn't happen. Not that, and I think Dick Downey was attending one of our meetings there. He said he'd be happy to reappoint somebody, but it just usually is that when after they resign, they just said, oh, well, I'm going to try something else or just, take a break or something. I think also, and just going back to when the charter was initially adopted back in 91, which just in my own reference was this a few months before I moved into town. Remembering back then, and people who were in the news with town politics had a lot of strong personalities that I think people were a little concerned with, of how they would behave in doing it, whether they'd be utilizing stuff from the Finance Committee as part of a political campaign or such. I think they wanted to basically just make sure that wasn't abused, just knowing the personalities involved. So I think that we moved from that. I think as a whole, the committee just didn't see that occurring anymore. So we figured that, this would be a good way of doing it. And the other aspect of it is, we always switch to say is, if it doesn't work, well, in 10 years, we can change it back.
Right.
So,
Let's give it a go.
Yeah. And it just
Yeah.
kind of seems, and that's basically was kind of a thing where it's just like, yeah, let's hope, and we can then maintain a strong Finance Committee, especially because, as you said, this is the time that a person would be resigning if they were running for office, would be right as you're preparing the budget for town meeting. And that's when you need people. And then if even you got appointed somebody, they'd have to get up to speed on everything, assuming that they've never been on Finance Committee before. So
Exactly.
that's one of the reasons why we made the change.
It was also wonderful to see the mention of the master plan. Now that we have a master plan, I was really happy to see that incorporated. I'm just going through a little bit quickly just to remind myself of some of the things I want to speak to, but I will go back to any page, article, what have you, if anyone needs. The other section I found really helpful.
You know what? Let me just
Oh,
stop
yeah.
my phone from ringing.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I still have a
okay.
landline phone, so I can't turn that one off.
The other section, I had two more questions. One is, I'm not sure if it's in this section about the citizens petition. There was a change to, I believe it was inclusion in the citizens petitions, where I believe they were taken, yes. Town administration, all proposed warrants shall be subject to review by town council. Any proposed article deemed illegal by town council shall be disqualified by the select board. So this used to have an exemption for citizens petitions, and
That is correct.
that has been taken out. And I assume that the idea behind that was so that the process wouldn't, all of what has to go into citizens petitions and the town meeting process and all of that, it's very confusing, and there's a lot there, and should, something that a citizen puts forward be not able to be legally acted upon anyway, it's not really conducive to town meeting or anybody's time to continue forward with the process. So
That's correct. And
Okay.
that was the main reason of doing it, to make sure that what was going forward, at least that we had a legal opinion that it was, it would be acceptable to the Attorney General's office. And I mean, we have in the past put forward some things where thinking that it's perfectly fine, or that it was like already in the bylaws, since I'm also the chair of the bylaw committee, that we put forward. Attorney General looks at it and it's like, oh no, there was a legal case a few years ago that, and one of it was the bylaw that we had for utility poles. And they accepted it, but said it was not enforceable. And the following town meeting, we repealed it since we couldn't enforce it.
Right.
So that was the main reason behind that. All the changes that are in that section doesn't really change anything. It's just formatting and putting things in order to try to help delineate a little bit of what is required for the town sponsored warrant articles or citizen petition warrant articles. But that is the only change to the whole
Substantive
process,
change.
that the review by legal counsel.
Mhm.
And the thing is that they're not going to say, oh, to fix that, you need to do this and this. It basically say, no, this is not acceptable, because the thing is, town council is still the town's council. It's not the citizens' council.
Mhm.
So if they, in fact, I was dealing with the person who was coming forward with the citizen petition for town meeting, dealing with bylaws, and kind of said was that, the whole thing, and not speaking to what he was saying now, but basically in general saying, they can give an opinion that says it's not right. If you need to fix it, you need to then find your own attorney, whether it's
Mhm.
somebody doing it pro bono for you, or, you're with a group. And I was using an example because they came to us a few years ago, Maynard or Maynard Green, I forget how the name is, but they had someone giving them legal advice for it, and that's part of it. So
the other section I wanted to say that I found really helpful was the having to do with the select board, and you had basically taken things out of
like a paragraph and put
paragraph
them in
form.
essentially
Here it
bullet.
is. Here it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is so helpful because it's so much easier to refer back and to say, oh, that's 3-2B4, than to say it's in 3-2B somewhere, like, and read through. So I do appreciate that formatting. I think that was important.
Yeah, I think that as we were reading through it ourselves, after, you get midway through it, you start getting cross-eyed and
Yeah.
trying to keep straight with everything, or reading the same line twice or stuff. So we
Right.
just figured this is just helpful in any listing of duties or powers or whatever, that it's helpful to sort of delineate each one individually.
Mhm. And then the only other question I had to do again with citizens petitions. I'm not sure where it was. You'd probably know better. It had to do with requiring if a citizen's petition had a monetary, or budget need, that it would have to be put into the citizen's petition where that money was going to be coming
No,
from.
that we pulled that out. That doesn't have that in there.
Oh, okay.
And
Maybe
that is still in that section on citizen petitions. Let me just see if I can quickly find
okay. 3 dash,
Then the three,
sorry for the scrolling.
okay, basically, it is
Oh, here it is, right?
not,
This,
yeah, well, no, it's there because way we broke it out is we had the requirements for citizens petitions. And
okay,
for disqualification, and we basically is that simply is they just need the number that is required of signatures to
okay,
meet the requirement. The next part is talking about town administration sponsored warrant articles. And we had taken out this whole thing with the exception of citizen petitions because all we are talking about are the ones that are town
I
sponsored.
see, okay,
So we're only talking about ongoing union negotiations, doesn't have to have a number with it. Otherwise, it does need. Then we go, the last one is for both of them, and that's the one we're subject to town council.
okay.
Basically,
I understand now.
yeah, we had a legal opinion that you didn't really require the citizens petitions to do that. Although obviously, if they're coming forward with something and saying, oh, we want to spend $50,000 on something, it's going to have to come from somewhere.
Mm.
So that would be a question that, we would assume that people, attending town meeting would ask, where is it coming from? How is it going to affect the budget? And if they can't really say, unless they say, oh, it'll be free cash or whatever, chances are they need to kind of work it through more. But it wasn't a way that Lisa said that it was something that we couldn't require them to have it
Mhm.
and then disqualify them if they couldn't say where.
Right,
So we're just leaving it there
Best
and
not to,
hopefully
yeah.
that they would have some way of there. And a lot of citizens petitions would be more for dealing with policy
Mhm.
rather than actually outlay of funds.
okay.
At least that's what we're assuming.
I think that was it for my questions. So I'm gonna, Peter, you were on this committee the whole time, and then we had,
And can I just say, he
Yeah.
did the heavy lifting for the finance committee, because I don't know if it got back to you, but Elliot, I think he attended one meeting and I wasn't sure if he was even paying attention.
Yeah.
So Peter, he carried the ball for you guys and you should be commended for that. So I really appreciate it.
well, thank you, Peter, very much.
Thanks, well,
And then Danielle
Well,
did,
Sure.
when you pointed her, she did it until she just got
Right.
overwhelmed and resigned.
And she
too, so-
resigned. I know. So Peter's been our consistent member on this committee. We've had a couple others, but I wanted to open it up to you first, Peter, if you had anything that
Yeah,
you wanted us to take a closer look at or.
um,
I think we should give Peter,
there's
not
some
only his-
reorganization.
I think we should give
Just let me-
Peter not only his extra stipend, but Elliot's extra stipend. So combine them both and give those to Peter.
Go ahead, Peter.
All right. Overall, I would just say yeah, we went through it fairly thoroughly. I don't think we're making any major changes. Maybe the FinCom one, somebody would say, is a big deal. There was a lot of work to reorganize it and try and make it clearer. But I don't think there's any huge changes there that bear investigation or question or any issues. So
Controversial or anything that anyone's gonna.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope.
Are there any
So-
other questions from committee members? I know they haven't had too much, Bill, I have to apologize. I didn't forward everything right after you had sent it. And so they haven't had
Well,
as much time to look it over, but
if you do look it over and find out, just give me a holler. My email's on the distribution list for the this meeting. So it's just wgcoleman@comcast.net. And Kadisha should just like meet me over the patio there because she's my next door neighbor.
oh.
Small towns.
Yeah. So, yeah, there isn't anything else. I mean, that's fine. I know that the town has put on the Facebook page to basically send me any questions that anybody has. So far, I haven't received any. So either we did a really good job, or just people are apathetic, or they'll always wait until May 4th, but it would be 14th to start looking this over. So.
All right.
No,
Well,
I think you all did a great job on this. I didn't see any, significant, changes, but a lot of clarifications that I think will make the charter a much more accessible document.
That was the main thing. I mean,
Yeah.
several members were basically, they were saying they wanted to be, they wanted clarity,
Mhm.
openness, accessibility to it, so that it was something that somebody the people could read and understand and then be able to act on. So I think we achieved those goals without really making change for change's sake or completely upsetting the apple cart. So
mhm.
and I think it'd be hard to, if we really wanted to try to change and tear everything apart, to try to get buy-in for that and to do it. And I mean, it's also, personally, I look at it, it's like, yeah, everything can be tweaked a bit, but we don't need to tear everything down and try to rebuild it, especially in, a short order time to get things done. So anyway.
Well, I also appreciate the way that we have structured things with the bylaws too, and having that as a resource for things that might need to be changed on a more frequent basis or updated or whatnot. I think that has been a good process for us in general.
Yeah, and
as-
that's actually, let me comment something. That's why we, in the charter, we used to list how many members are on each committee.
Oh,
every
yes, that is a
appointed-
change I noticed too.
And we
Yes.
pulled out
Mhm.
from it, and now we'll be able to just make those changes in the bylaw. It still has to go through town meeting vote, so it's still, it isn't something where just like you can just do it willy-nilly. But I actually found out something recently that apparently the Council on Aging has adopted their own bylaws, and they changed the number of members they have. And the Council on Aging agent contacted me, and I guess kind of said like, no, you can't do that. It has to be in the bylaw for it. And it said, the good news is that once the charter passes, we can fix it however you want it, as long as
Right.
town meeting approves it. But, we're.
Right now
we
it's
just
in the
have to-
charter, which is
Yeah,
like
so you
not
gotta keep,
changeable. Yeah.
you gotta keep 5 members and no associate members or,
Mhm.
kind of thing. So it's like, yeah. So in fact, I got that. That's the other thing I have to do tonight is read through what they had written up as their own bylaws. So we'll see that. But yeah, it makes things a lot easier to change. I think one of the examples was that the select board, I think early on in the pandemic, was thinking of like, how could we increase the number of members of the Board of Health? And I think just, the fact that, we're the people who are on there, expertise to dealing with the pandemic or, responding to something like that would make sense to be able to have a broader scope of individuals' backgrounds on that. For it would be just one example on it. But that's just something where then it could have been quickly had been addressed at a town meeting, and then they could have done that. But
Right.
yeah. But now it's just like, oh, hopefully everything will go through and that'll get changed. But that's I guess that was the other big item that I would say that was in there for that. So okay. So,
And is your charter report, does that accompany the warrant, or is that something separate? The
the report is
document?
separate. I mean, the
Okay.
warrant articles, we have submitted them.
Yep,
I don't think
have
we
them.
have them on the website, but we gave them to town hall, and I'm assuming that you
Yes.
received them. And it really basically just goes through and says, these are the changes that we have on file, and this is a synopsis of what got changed in that, rather than listing out the entire, several pages for each article of the whole changes on that. That's the way we did it the last time around. Back in, what was that, 2013? So that we're just doing it the same way that we had done it before. But I have in the comments the link to the website, which both copies of the changes to the charter and the report. So basically,
Okay.
I think I have something said like, for a more detailed explanation,
Mhm.
please read our report, website, listed, and then the full charter written up
Right.
is listed in there as well.
Okay. And I would recommend, just to members of the public, and we also have the report and the redlined copy and all of the articles on our board docs for this meeting. So highly recommend reading, because I think the report sort of gives you the overview and the process and all of that before you start digging into the actual changes. So I think it's helpful. I think it's a good document. Jillian, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
I have a quick question. I did not get a chance to fully read it over, sorry. So maybe my question's already in there and it's obvious. But I did have a question. In the past, we've talked about having like sort of subcommittee members where we sort of like assign them certain projects or whatever, but they're not like voting members of the committee. Is that something that is talked about in the charter? Or maybe, I guess, are we even interested in still doing something like that?
Yes, I do believe there is language in the charter about the allowing for subcommittees.
I don't think we have that in the
No?
charter itself. I think that's just basically was, are you talking about like the budget subcommittee that like the school committee's finance and select board? Or what exactly are you talking about?
So if I understand, look at where it is, whether it's in the bylaws or the charter, but the school, the finance committee can name subcommittees, and that's in there, so.
Okay, I'm having some connection issues tonight, so I'm hearing that something like that is in there.
Yeah, I feel like I remembered reading it, and
Is that under powers and duties of finance committee?
I would think so.
Oh, yeah, it does. It says, finance committee may appoint subcommittees and delegate them such that its powers as it deems to be in the best interest of the town of Maynard. So yeah,
There
you
it is.
guys can form subcommittees and, I mean, it basically, if, well, it's however you handle it. I'm assuming it'd be something like, well, you wanted to
Yeah.
have, instead of having the whole
It's
committee
there on
meet.
page, the same language is on page 3. It just got moved. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's basically like if you just want to have a subcommittee to look at the books of some, whether it's the police department, fire department, library, kind of thing, and report back kind of thing. So
Right.
you could either do that, or the same thing is that you have probably could have like liaisons to various committees as well. So I'm assuming, like, I think Katie is liaison to the bylaw committee.
Right.
I'm
Yes.
assuming you have a liaisons to school committee and whatnot.
Right.
Okay, so any other
Thanks.
questions?
Anything else for Bill this evening? Okay, Well, again, thank you so much, Bill, for chairing this committee and the bylaw committee. And we appreciate all of your work. And I think it really did turn out very well. I
Oh,
think
well, thank you very
it is
much.
a big upgrade for the charter. So
Yeah. And
I'm
like I
excited
said,
to get it ratified.
yeah, well, thank you. I hope so too. Yeah, so if you do have any questions, if you take another glance at it, whatever, just email me and I'd be happy to give you a response. So, all
Okay.
right. Well,
Thank you
that's it
so
then.
much.
I will take my leave
Thank
then.
you.
Bye.
All righty. Moving on. Number 3 on our agenda, review town meeting warrant articles and prepare recommendations. So we are in that now. I just wanted to first, before we did that, or in conjunction with doing that, especially since we have some newer members and a new town website, I wanted to walk through something real quick. So this is our new town website. I was just getting a tutorial this week, and turned out some of my permissions weren't correct, and Greg Wilson and I are getting it all set now. But so on the website, if you either hover or click boards and committees, finance committee is there. And if you go to our website, previously, for what I don't know what happened between the old one and the new one, but we did have a mention of board docs and a link there prior, and it wasn't there in the switchover. So we've gotten that back up there. So I wanted to let everyone know that. So the committee meeting minutes and agendas, this brings you to the website's agenda section. But we also have, and all the documents for our meetings in general are up on board docs. And so if you click here, it's going to say, you're leaving the site. And that's
Alana,
okay.
in preparation for the notes, I found this so helpful. I went to
Oh.
this like 10 times today and I appreciated the new site so much.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So if you're not all that familiar with board docs, you're gonna you click that from the FinCom site, and then it defaults to the select board and their meetings. So what you do is you go over here and you pull down, sorry, this is in my way. And here you can find the finance committee. And if you click on that, okay, so I'm glad it's doing this. It's still showing the select board meeting. Board docs glitches like this a little bit on occasion. And I'm
Click
not
on
sure
finance
why.
committee again, and it'll
Yes,
change.
if you click,
And it takes a while to think. It takes a
there it
few
is.
minutes.
Yeah,
There it goes, yeah.
it is a little clunky at times. So if that happens, all of our meetings say finance committee. So if it's still saying select board or anything else, just go back and click on finance committee again, and it will come up.
So that's literally the trick, is you click on it twice?
I'm sorry to say, but
No,
sometimes.
because I go there and it goes to select board.
Yeah.
It would never have occurred to me to click it on it twice.
You know, it is what it is. I thought it only did it when I was like signed in. I was hoping it was because of the back end of things, but it seems to just do it sometimes. So anyway, so then you'll see our meetings here, and these all have an agenda attached to them, and in these places over here where you see this little icon is all of the various documents having to do with that discussion item. So I wanted to point that out to everyone. I know, especially this
Question?
time of year, there's a lot of emails flying. Yes, go ahead, Peter.
I'm sorry, but do you know a way to download all of these attachments? Like even for a particular item?
To download them, you can just click on them. To do them all at once, I don't.
All right, that's fine.
I
If you
think
don't know, that's fine.
I think you can control click. Yeah, it's going there right now. You can see. I've never done them all in one go, but if you click on them, they'll download immediately. So these are, so as you can see, these are the ATM warrant articles. So we have some work to do, a little bit of work to do. I hope that these are, you know, and depending on how you all operate and what you prefer, I believe all of these are in emails to you all, but as I said, and apologies entirely, there's emails flying everywhere this time of year. And, you know, if I believe that I have all of them here, and so if you maybe, if I missed a forward or there's one here that you haven't seen yet, my apologies. You can ask me to send it to you if you need it, or you can download it from here. So that is what I wanted to just go through first so that everybody.
Guy, I'm sorry to ask this,
Yeah.
but is there a working list of these?
Yes, that's a very good question. So Greg Wilson, so now I have to clarify which Greg. Greg Wilson and I are just getting, or he is getting that list done because I said it's really necessary, because especially at ATM, there's just so many, and trying to keep track of them is rough. So he has a draft Excel sheet coming with all of
Okay,
that information that I will hopefully be able to work off of, or
So they have
take
put
what we need.
together,
so good.
they have put together a list of the draft controls?
That's what we were just talking about today, getting today. Yes. He was working on, I think, and it was just, is it in a state that is shareable? But it is his first annual town meeting, and
Wait, Greg
know.
is the new ATA?
yes, Greg Wilson.
Who's Greg Wilson? Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. Oh, wait, seriously?
No,
Greg
seriously.
and Greg?
Yeah. Greg. I know.
Oh my God.
I know. I have to catch myself now.
Wait,
I'll say Greg, and they'll be like,
that should
which
have
one?
been disqualifying right there.
I know.
No.
How do you hire somebody with, that's like the best boss trick. Hire an assistant with your name.
I will say Greg Wilson is wonderful to work with and very helpful, but he is also, you know, he is learning. This is his first annual town meeting, and there has, you know, it's been quite a season. So I will say that. But yes, we'll get a
Okay,
list
yep.
to work off of.
Is this really his first annual town meeting?
His first day was annual town meeting last year.
Oh, wow. Okay.
His
I
very
didn't know
first
that.
day.
Yeah.
So he was there at town meeting, but he did not do any of the preparation or whatnot for that town meeting.
Right. All right.
Wait, what town meeting? You mean the fire,
Or
the school meeting?
No, it was, or was it special town meeting? No, it was one of the town meetings. I can't remember now if it was annual town meeting or special town meeting. I think it was annual town meeting because I think we were outdoors.
Yes, I think we were outdoors.
Yeah, so I think
yeah.
so he's coming up on his
Okay.
1 year anniversary, I think, with the town for when annual town meeting happens. All right. Lost my train of thought. Okay, town meeting warrant articles. So for those that are new to this process, let me just take a second. So all of these warrant articles, these draft controls come to us via the select board as approved. You know, the select board doesn't write them all, doesn't sponsor them all, but they come in a general channel in that way. And our job as the finance committee is to go through all of these articles to vote on a recommendation saying we recommend passage of this article or we do not. And then we write comments for each of them. So that is just to, you know, explain. So that is the That is our charge. That is what we have to do. So my thought is to go through some of them tonight, maybe some of the ones that are relatively easy and get the hang of it. And then go from there, and we'll have a list and we'll go through, and we have to look back at my calendar, but we have a couple of meetings to do that, and we can go through on how long, potentially adding other meetings if we think we need to, as it is a busy time of year. But so here we go. So draft control A, town report acceptance. This is a draft control that will come across our desks pretty much every year, as the town is required to write a town report and submit a town report, and the various town departments contribute to it. And at town meeting, we accept that report. So that is all that draft control A is. It is acceptance of that report. So let me poll the committee here if we would like to go through some of the articles tonight, as probably as many as we can get through in maybe about an hour, but hold off on voting our recommendations for next time, or if especially some of these, you know, simple ones, if we want to just go ahead and get through some of the voting process.
Personally, I'd like to understand the citizens petition.
Okay.
That, you know, to me, so I don't see any reason to spend time at this point on things like,
On the
you
easy
know,
ones.
accept the town report, because
Okay.
you know, those are pretty routine. But the citizens petitions, you know, are
Right, let me grab
ones
those.
that, you know, we're probably going to need to struggle a little bit more with.
Okay, hold on, I will grab. All right, so if there was some confusion with this citizens petition, it was submitted without this language right here when it was first submitted, so it had to go back, get re-get the signatures and come back, because all it had was the language up at the top here to see if the town would vote. Sorry, it's sideways. But in order to have it accepted, the full language had to be attached to where the citizens were signing, so that they could see the full language of the petition that was going to be presented. So that was why we were given this petition and then given it again, because it needed this process.
So we're supposed to make a recommendation to town meeting voters about this. You know, I understand, you know, there are typically very positive intentions behind, you know, most citizens petitions. But they are also often not fully thought out. And that's not to suggest that this particular one isn't thought out. I'm just saying, as a general observation, most citizens petitions aren't well thought out in terms of the implications. And so I have no idea what the adoption, so it's suggesting that we delete the current chapter 25 stretch energy code and replace it with this new code. And I have no,
Right.
you know, I
Would
don't
that-
know that we have any basis upon which to make a recommendation.
I'm trying to think, would that be who we could ask as a someone who could speak to your the concerns, like what would this do? Would it be Justin
Well, I
or
think
Bill
the-
Nemser
I
maybe?
think the place to start, well,
Mhm.
probably Bill Nemser would be a place to start. My guess is that, since it's a code, it's probably a Rick Asman,
Rick Asman, yeah.
question.
Okay.
But, it would be helpful to understand what deleting the current code and replacing it with a file. And then, response might be, it's not a problem, it's no big issue.
Okay.
Or it could be, we're not in a position, to be able to do this. I have no idea where this language comes from and how
Yeah,
problematic
yeah.
it might be.
Ken, I
Right.
feel this has to do with the
Um,
Green Meadow building in some way. And the
Yes.
fight for geothermal and net zero building. And I know
Yes.
we've gotten sent a lot of stuff from Julie on that.
Well, so I appreciate that. But that's not what that's not what we're
Yeah.
being asked to.
Yeah, understand.
We're
Yeah.
being asked to make a recommendation, and in order to make a recommendation, we need to understand what the implications of this is.
Mhm.
I'm not prepared to do this. If there's someone on this call,
Right.
someone on the FinCom who understands these, then that's fine. We could research it, but it also
Yeah.
seems to me that, I would hope that we have experts who, would be able to sit there and say, not a problem, or this is a big problem, or something in between.
Yeah.
Sorry if I missed Ken asking it, but
Yep.
did we talk about having whoever proposed this come to FinCom?
Yeah, we normally do. I mean, I think, or at least we have when like Green Maynard put forward petitions, we did.
So I'm fine with having the petitioner come here. That doesn't address the issue of
Right.
what the implication is
That-
for the town to do this.
Can I
Okay.
just interject?
Yeah.
I think we need the town planner to come in, someone who has the lead AP expertise to tell us what the current energy codes are and what Massachusetts is accept. It's sort of like, I think this is what Ken is saying too, is that
Mhm.
give the context, is this the way everyone's going and then we have to adopt it anyway, or are we
Mhm.
jumping the gun?
Yeah.
But the
Exactly.
energy codes are changing. We obviously have to keep up with it. Are we accepting it early or can we put it off? And so we need a
Okay.
contact.
Got it. That all makes sense. And yes, I will reach out to those in town that I believe could help us answer those questions.
It might-
And
Also be good to. Sorry, I think I'm getting some lag today. It
little
might
bit.
also be good to talk to Justin or
Mhm.
someone who is in charge of the other buildings in the town, because this
Right.
I would assume apply to all buildings, not just the new school that's being built. And that
Right.
could be a big problem for the old buildings.
although most
Absolutely.
of the good question there too, most of when you adopt new codes, I feel like there's usually like a grandfathering system where
There
what's
is.
you're not
There
suddenly
is.
needed to
So
do
we
everything,
don't have
but
the
moving forward.
we don't have the expertise on this.
Mhm.
I don't want to be assuming that something is grandfathered. I want someone who's an expertise, like Khadijah's saying, I'd like to see someone come in and sit there and say, here's what the implication is. This is not a problem. we need to adopt these eventually anyway, or this is a big problem because it applies to buildings beyond, an appropriate scope on this. I'm
Mhm.
just saying, let's get the expert in.
Can I?
Okay.
Can I just throw in?
Yep.
I do think there's a slightly bigger question. If citizens petitions are becoming more popular,
Mhm.
how much do we think we should burden the town to respond to us in some ways, to answer questions like this? And I would almost suggest the standard should be, we're going to say no to stuff like this. Somebody asked a question earlier, is this something we're doing to catch up with other towns? Or, I mean, this is a citizen's petition, not a town proposed change. So I'm guessing the answer is no. But I almost feel like, I mean, yes, we should ask questions, but I don't want to make the town planner spend 40 hours trying to analyze this so that we can say, no, it's not a good idea. The default is almost, well, especially if it's stuff that isn't entirely clear and easy to answer.
Well,
The
somebody
default
better
is almost
spend,
no.
somebody better spend the 40 hours figuring out what the implication is going to be to the town.
Yeah, I
Just
think,
because some citizens, they got 10 people to say, here, sign this paper, we should spend a bunch of resources on it.
So
I think
let's
some of these
say,
things
let's
get pretty
say the
complicated.
let's say the implication of this is it would require the town to pay $2 million to retrofit a bunch of buildings. You don't think that the town planner should figure
Now,
out that
that's a good point. Yep.
Mhm.
That's a good, I was more thinking
Mhm.
we reflexively say no.
yeah,
Maybe
I
that might not win
see,
at town meeting.
right. I think for some of these citizens petitions that come forward, and possibly for this one as well, it can be a simple email back. There could be very simple, like, here is this and that, and I know that. And we don't necessarily have to burden staff with like a full, coming to the meeting. It's a very simple thing that can be shared and then we can discuss. But in
Correct,
other
correct.
cases, there may be times where it is very complicated and there's a lot of nuance and we need to have a discussion with them. And I think we can, to your point, Peter, not overly, not demand. I'm not going to, say I need a meeting with Rick Asman, Bill Nems, or Justin DeMarco on this to, next week. I'm going to say,
No, and I don't
yeah,
mean to imply that you would.
right. I'm going to put
Right.
out the questions, say what we need answered, and see what they come back with. And if that is, what, the easiest way is if I come to your next meeting and we have a whole discussion, wonderful. And if it's, here's an answer to that, and I'll forward it. And if that's not, if there are still questions, then I can ask them to come to a meeting.
I think for these types of articles, you might want to make the first pass at town council to see if they would be, there's some legal word for it, but like legally viable or binding, or if they're just advisory. So if they're just
Yes.
advisory, maybe you don't want to use as much time to invest in them, but yeah, that could
I
be a
think
first
there's
pass.
already
maybe.
a legal thing out, right?
Yes, I believe that these,
There's one
I
about the
remember
Green
seeing
Meadow
it in the
heating
email saying
system
one
that's
was
advised.
advisory and
Yep.
one was
Yeah,
I
one
think the
was
Green
like,
Meadow heating system is
applicable or whatever.
advisory,
mhm,
but the stretch code is enforceable.
right. So I do agree with Jillian's point, which is if we're talking about something that will only ever have an advisory capacity, that it, hours and hours may not be particularly worthwhile. Although, again, it may depend on the subject matter.
Mhm.
So speaking of that other, I'm just trying to see, so I can speak to that response. And yeah, A is not binding.
Which one's not binding?
The fossil fuel, so the next one, yeah, I'm gonna bring that up right now. So the town council's email back to Greg said that this citizens petition would be non-binding.
Have you forwarded that email to us?
I think
Yes.
so.
I didn't
Um,
see an attachment, but I did see you forwarded it.
Alana, what does non-binding mean?
It means that even if we vote for it, the town does not have to do it.
Okay, got it.
So,
Thank you.
so Katie, so town meeting cannot take a power away from a board that it has. And so it can't sit there and, say, we're gonna force you to make this decision when they have a decision to make. A good example of this was a few years ago when the, town meeting, citizens petition came forward, I think, saying something about selling water outside of town. And so that imposed on the powers of the select board as the water
Water
commissioner.
commissioners.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
So that being said, for the citizens petition, concerning the Green Meadow School being designed and built to operate without fossil fuel for heating and cooking, do we feel that we can have discussion amongst ourselves about what we would like to put forward for that? As it is only a non-binding petition, or do we feel like we should have a discussion with, I don't know, the chair of the Green Meadow Building Committee or something? I mean, we just had that group.
So in my mind, one, this is more straightforward. I can understand this.
Right.
And what the implications are, and two, it's non-binding. So I
Right.
don't think that we need to spend time on this.
Okay.
Just personal opinion
Yep,
as a
yep.
member.
Open to others if they have strong feelings. Okay. Looking through some of the others that may need outside. So the ones pertaining to water and sewer, I believe, are going to be discussed at the next select board meeting. And then we could have Justin, I think he was perfectly willing to come back and talk to us about the water and sewer retained earnings and enterprise budget and reserve fund.
It would seem to me, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No,
Go
that's
ahead.
okay. Just going through the one, I'm just looking at them right now. There's several that have to do with water and sewer. So go ahead, Ken.
So I was just gonna say, I think AJ is one that we're gonna need to talk to. That's the article from the school committee.
Mm-hmm.
So we're gonna need to make a recommendation about that. And part of that is going to be understanding exactly what the implications are.
Oh, okay. I think this article came up in the budget subcommittee.
Mm-hmm.
So if it passes, what happens?
So this is to give the school the amount that they originally asked for, correct?
So this is to get the school, not, well, so this, I believe, and I see Natasha's on here. I believe this is, that the amount that they're being given isn't even level, funded and, not level funded, level service. And so it's, the amount they're being given is something less than level service.
I
And
think
that's-
this is maybe 500,000 more than what they were given, roughly. I think
Yep.
this is what they were cut, and it's replacing that.
Well, I'm gonna need to bring up the,
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure.
So I don't know if we want to use the word cut. They're still
Yeah.
getting an increase from last year. It's just not what they're
It was not
Right.
what
looking
their,
for with
their
their
budget
grants running
was.
out things.
What the ask was.
Correct.
Um, do we want to ask questions?
Sure.
This is the school committee.
Natasha, are you on to speak about this?
Yeah, do you want to talk about this, Natasha, or not?
Sure, sure. Hold on, let me put my video on. Hello, good evening.
Um,
Hi,
so I
Natasha.
guess my first question, or a question would be, do you expect this to be amended at town meeting? Specifically the amount?
So there are two actions that are happening that have been happening right now. One, we've Brian and Greg have been having separate budget conversations amongst themselves. Some of them have talked about the circuit breaker, and I think this also came up in the recent town budget subcommittee meeting. Greg alluded to this a little bit. But because there are also deadlines when to submit an article, the putting forth this article was meant to, it can be withdrawn if budget conversations between now and town meeting improve. At the time, we also had the state numbers that when this was, initially being put forward, that hadn't been quite finalized as of yet, but the intent would not be to withdraw it if there's no action to improve the current recommendation for the school budget.
Good answer.
so what was allocated, at least presently, is 22,229,000 and change, which to Katie's point is 514, almost 515 below level service budget. So I think the intent here is to bring it up to level service. So that would require an additional 514.
And just for, I don't know if helpful for context, but we had gotten some information from Lori, just from directional purposes, that the budget for annual town meeting could be voted and not balanced then, but a balanced budget would be required by the time tax rates are set, which is would occur in the fall. So again, I don't know what that means, but just as a operational or legality moment, this is something that some towns have chosen to do. And then it allows the conversation of like, okay, what happens between, how do we achieve that if that's what the town wants as a priority? And is that lead to a conversation about an override or, looking at all other aspects of the town's needs that, outside of just the school that are also need to be addressed.
So I think from a practical perspective, what that means is that this article could be passed at annual town meeting, leaving the budget unbalanced at that point. And you would have then between annual town meeting and some special town meeting in the fall in order to bring the budget into balance. And so that would have to be done either by making adjustments to the existing budget, increasing revenues through an override or some other means.
Yeah,
Right,
the
it
part
could
of,
be that more revenue, like the legislation, like it might allow time for that to come, to fruition, to understand what that, like the fair share, everyone keeps talking about that, but there's no formula yet set for that. Or other revenues that maybe start coming in higher than forecasted to allow for adjustment. It's all uncertainty, but nothing that is known right now.
Well,
Well,
so it
Just
shifts.
to be clear, but wait, just to be clear, one of the more likely things, should that pass in its form, is that we would then turn around and cut the budget at fall town meeting. Because we realize we can't make up 500,000. So just,
cut the budget in other places because we can't cut the school budget.
no, cut the school budget. We, they can pass it at 500, we can turn around and revoke it in the fall,
Ah, I see.
which creates a whole set of other issues for the schools. I totally.
Well,
agree.
so
I'm
I don't
not
know. I
advocating
mean,
that,
the
but-
point, the
but
point
that
here
certainly
is,
is one possible outcome.
so the point is that we don't know what the Commonwealth's budget is going to be at this point. And, at town meeting, we still won't know. So this basically sits there and says, I mean, in my mind, what this says is the town is committing to trying to work towards a level service budget. And right now, we're going to sit here and say there's town meeting voters want to have a level service budget. Now, we don't have to take any action immediately at annual town meeting. You have the state budget that comes out and the adjustments that get made, and so that part clarifies. You have local revenues and expenditures that clarify. And so this basically pushes it forward to a special town meeting in the fall, at which point this 514, almost $515,000 gap then could either be adjusted by moving money around. The 515 could be reduced at annual town meeting, whatever.
But with,
What I'm not,
with sorry, Alana, but very good.
what I'm not
But if
totally.
the number
hold
is
on.
500,000, some piece of that is going to be a cut. There's no way we're coming up with 500,000 between now and the fall. Just so we all know, I mean, we can vote for it, but there's no way we come up with the money.
A cut or an ask to appropriate that money, an override ask. That would be the other option. What I'm not sure about though is if we were to go that path and that does not pass, if this article passes at town meeting, then we go forward to fall town meeting and it is decided that the only way to get to that level is to pass an operational override for that amount, and that fails, then I'm not sure exactly what happens.
Well, so town meeting voters
Then it gets,
can't sit there and say, we want you to come up with $515,000, but we're not going to pass an override. Because
Oh, I
at
think
some
they
point-
yes,
could.
they can. That
Well,
is the
no, I
absolute
understand
most
they
likely
can.
thing that's going to happen.
Well, so
That's the most likely outcome of this.
but
Of course, they're
at
going to say
that
yes to
point,
this
they would
and no to an
say-
override.
Part of the discussion would either be you do an override and you increase revenue,
Okay, but
or you're going to cut funding in these areas. You've got to put a specific, place that you're gonna make that cut from.
But don't they make that decision when
You-
they vote? Originally, like, shouldn't that?
No.
No?
No, they do
No,
not.
because this article doesn't say how we get it.
Mm.
Well, it does
It
say
just-
how.
Well,
does
it
say
gives
how-
options. It gives options.
No, it doesn't. Okay, but folks, we're talking about an override in the same year. You're talking about $700 for a new Green Meadow school.
I agree.
This is not even worth having a discussion. If we do an override, it will fail. Absolutely no question asked. And it probably will drag the school down too. So this is a silly conversation. We should not be as a good policy thing, we should not be trying to push an override at this point.
But wait a second, it's not a silly conversation. Okay, it is, this is about
With a
$500,000.
real politics sense.
You're talking about $500,000 that is not going to the schools in order to maintain a level service, level services. And so you're
But how
sitting here-
much
you're-
increase are we getting in taxes from last year? We're not even gonna have enough money to like give anyone any money.
Correct. This amount would eat the entirety pretty much of the additional taxes from FY 23.
and
23
this is
to
something
24.
that we've been dealing with for, a decade now, is that we continue to think we can cut on expenses without increasing revenues, and, live under the delusion that 2.5% increase is gonna, year in, year out, is gonna continue to fund all the services that we need. So you're basically sitting here saying, because the town administrator has decided that he's gonna cut $500,000 from the level service amount that the schools need. So
It's not
they-
a cut.
they-
They're still getting an increase.
No. What I said is, the school said, here is the level service budget we need, and that part has been cut down. Now, I realize they're getting an increase, but they're getting an increase of what, 2-3%? That's not going to allow. So the town is gonna have to confront the fact that either they continue to rob from the schools in order to allow services in other areas, or we're gonna go out and get additional revenue.
Well, I think I would like, in order to know better what the level service budget is, if this is something that is a systemic problem and we think might be considering to happen year after year, before voting yes for something like this, I would like to see a line item budget FY 23 to 24. So I can see what level service increases in each area and what level service means to the schools. We could also look into, as the FinCom, we could look into auditing and getting a better look into the school's budget and see if, this is in fact the way that we need to go.
Can I suggest something, Alana?
Sure.
Just to alter that slightly. So
Okay.
they won't have an FY 24 line item budget. They don't.
Right.
I mean, until they get they're not going to do the work to create that. And that to me makes some sense. It would make some sense to say, can we get, FY 22 and FY 23, and then,
Okay.
some kind of narrative about how they're trying to change it or where they're adding emphasis in terms of dollars.
Mhm.
That I think is a reasonable ask.
Okay.
So just throwing it out there.
Right, because just the word level service, I just want to dig in a little more and know what that means, because I'm quite certain, and especially after we had a discussion with Justin 2 weeks ago, that he, could have made a budget that is much higher than what he would be granted, and call it level service, as he believes he needs $1.5 million a year for roads. And we would never give, and so he would also never be given his level service. So that's the kind of thing I want to understand. what are the services that are not being leveled?
I don't disagree. I don't disagree that we need to understand what that level service budget constitutes, okay? Now, I would point out, there's a big difference between not fixing your roads for a year and not educating children for a year, okay? So I think, there's a different moral, we have a moral responsibility to provide education to the children. I don't know that we have a moral responsibility to provide roads to our citizens, but the point you make, Alana, I think is a fair point.
And I absolutely agree. And actually, I was very encouraged to see some numbers having to do with, and I can share them. I was just starting to look with, and I'm not a huge standardized testing fan, but sometimes you need certain metrics. The bounce back of our students in the Maynard Public Schools from prior to the pandemic appeared, from what I looked at, to be really doing a good job, especially compared to even AMSA, who has not bounced in such a way with certain testing. So, and I also am thrilled that I think it was Chuck mentioning the climbing of our high school in rank. So absolutely. And there's a lot of good things happening. So that's, again, why I want to, see further, because I think there is a lot of good to be found there as well. Natasha, I see your hand raised. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I to your point, there's absolutely a lot to be found. I know one of the things at our recent school committee meeting that was discussed, we have these ESSER funded positions called the MTSS staff in each building. And those are not funded from the operating budget, but they have been some of those enormous assets to help improve teacher, training, helping, with some understanding some push-in services to kind of bring the staff to a better level of their comfort zone with peers. We will start seeing those fade, in the coming years, and there's genuine concern, because they are also the same team who looks over the data of those assessments and kind of makes plans around, the different grades on where we can kind of tweak instructional time or that kind of thing. So there is, that concern that there, but right now we have absolutely taken as best advantage of those folks to enhance our staff currently in that area. From a level service perspective, I guess if I just want to make sure my takeaway is understanding, you were looking to see where we are, because we have certain drivers that we've indicated on that are what are kind of going or bringing some of these things up, like technology, transportation, out of district school tuition expenses that are playing into the FY24 projections. Are there something more specific that you're thinking beyond that maybe I can get more targeted information for you? I mean, like maintenance, we put more into maintenance the past, like, so I'm just wondering what is, I just want to make sure I would get that or can direct you to that information a little bit more. And I will say also, I mean, we saw Assabet's report that recently came back, right? They're increasing their operating budget by like 12%. Maynard's allocation is over 6% of what so it's not unique to Maynard that, a lot of these drivers are affecting, how many kids who need more special education services than happened before COVID. That's part of the other unknown, and that doesn't stop with ESSER. Unfortunately, that's where we're like, okay, we still have to provide these extra counseling, extra evaluations, more than we had before COVID. So I just want to make sure I'm getting the right information for you. And one of the things I also wanted to mention that did come up in the town budget subcommittee meeting, which is a very valid point, is Greg said, and I heard it echoed here, that we just don't see the state giving us more revenue. And I think that's very true. What do we do about that? Because the expenditures are just outseating our revenue, right? And as a whole. And if we're not able to get that count on state revenue through local or, chapter 70 or whatever that does that, but our expenses are now exceeding 2.5% every year. And Greg did say, look, you probably should expect the next thing next year. We're going to be having the same conversation, because how do we address that, right? Are we going to constantly every year having to cut, and we're really making and it's not just the school. So I don't want to, right now I'm advocating for the school, of course, but I know this is the DPW has costs that are also exceeding to, their expenses. And so how we as a town want to prioritize, do we feel that these are enough to do at some point an override to raise more money revenue wise, because we can't depend on state aid any longer, because we're not able to raise, as new growth is kind of capping out as well. And I think it's just a town conversation. I think it's just really important, not just for the school, but that's what I'm speaking about mostly right now.
Yeah, no, I do agree with the broader conversation for sure. I think I'm trying to answer your first question. I would like the idea, I would like to see the line item budgets from FY21 to 22, because I know you wouldn't, or FY22 to 23, sorry. Those were the ones you would have, right? No, we're in 23, sorry.
We're
So
in
many
23. So
different
the
fiscal years.
The school approves through cost centers, like we at our level, and then underneath them, that's where the kind of at the end of the year, there's like movement, until
Okay.
the year, the end close. I think Greg sometimes does a little bit of that too. Like you budget in one area, it goes a little up, and then so I don't know if the year end report might be like in retrospect, what was FY22 spent? I don't
Yeah.
know.
I think I might already have that, actually. The one that Desi gets.
Yeah, that's the one that's kind of compiled for, but again, I don't know if there's a particular targeted area that the drivers of what is anticipated, I think, is in the budget presentation. And I think the quarterly reports, although we are a little bit behind because Wayne had been out for a bit, but the quarterly reports can kind of give a little bit of a litmus understanding of what we are seeing on a quarterly basis. Like
Hey,
trends.
Alana, remember I told you I
Yes.
need to leave at 9
You do, yes.
to go pick up Lindy at Logan.
Thank you.
So those are the ones. I mean, the other ones, certainly we need to look at, but those are the ones I think we need to have more discussion
Have
on.
more, yep, absolutely.
All
All
right,
right,
sorry
thank you, Ken.
to run out.
That's
but-
okay. No, understood.
Thanks,
Bye,
Ken.
Ken.
Just think about it and, just shoot
Okay.
me an email,
Yeah, I'll send you an email with the,
But
Yeah,
if I mean,
Mhm.
if there are quarter end reports, from first quarter, just send over a few examples would be helpful, and then we'll figure out if that works. Or,
yeah, I'll send over what we had for
I have a
22s
few
and then,
examples, Alana, of
Okay.
prior year stuff
okay,
that we've gotten. Although, yeah, the most recent one I seem to have is FY18. But anyway.
maybe
Let's
not
look and
that
see what
far
they have
back,
now.
but we'll see, yeah. Jillian, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
I think it might also be good for us to understand. I know that, there was potentially many grant opportunities for COVID and other things, and there's just, grants in particular that the schools can access so the other departments cannot. If understanding any of this level service, like the request for more money, is because some of these grants are running out, I think that might also be helpful for us to frame our discussions too.
So we can certainly, we approved actually some grants recently. And the thing about grants is that they can't supplant our operating expenses. So they're usually added, like if they're competitive grants, they're
Right.
depending on when they come out. So that's the trick about them, is that sometimes, and then we don't also know the dollar amount that we would ever be allocated for them. It might be like you could eligible for a certain amount, and then you don't
Of
get,
course.
you
No,
know,
no.
the literacy one, like we had a literacy one, which was great. And that's why last year we didn't need to seek operating funding for the literacy as we thought, because we later on received that literacy grant later on, which was helpful. But I don't know if that's what you're thinking of, Jillian. But there are certain ones
I
annual
was
that are not
thinking, so
competitive,
the-
or like special education.
Yeah, it's more like understanding if any FTEs were covered on grants that are going to expire because of COVID or otherwise. And now you want to put those people to keep level service in this 500K request. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. I don't believe that's the case, but I will say, just as a parallel conversation, PEG is one of the that keeps coming up, PEG access, that funding in FY24 is supposed to be. And so that is like those staff, you know, are not funded in the operating budget, but there's a risk there of not, how are we going to fund those staff? And we without an opportunity to increase our operating budget, you know, there's no way we can ever move staff in to even absorb one or two, to less rely on PEG access funding. So that's just another conversation piece I think is important, because FY, I think 24, 25 is where we're going to feel that.
But
Yeah, I believe that's correct.
another way, though, on Jillian's question, and correct me if I'm wrong, Natasha, but based on what you said earlier, is the COVID stuff funding hasn't really run out, and there is a whole bunch of stuff that's happening with the ESSER money that in 2 years, I think you're going to be saying, wait, we made really good gains with this stuff, and now we have to figure out how we continue without it. But I think it may be early for saying the COVID grant stuff is expiring. Is that
The ESSER,
accurate, Natasha?
so the ESSER ones are the ones that are still on the table. There's like ESSER 2 and 3 that are going to be expiring. Like 2 might be expiring this upcoming year, and then 3. There are plans that are submitted to state that are like kind of earmark how we're going to be spending that money, and that is part of those, like counseling. There was a nurse. I think that's one of the areas that's going to be cut back.
Yeah, I'm not so much asking us what you're spending it on. It's more that's replacing that in a few years is the more likely thing where there's going to be an issue.
Yeah, but
if
those
you're
were,
trying to
I mean,
continue it.
we know, like they knew going into ESSER that those
Right.
were a limited time,
Doesn't
and that
mean you're
those
not
people
going
were
to say,
going to
oh,
be.
this was really effective.
No, I understand. They'll feel it when they're gone, but like that, the plan from the get-go for those was very time specific though.
But
So
I will
Right.
say
like
also,
most grants,
Currently, that is level right now. So in the future, you might want to keep it level.
right. Well, the ESSER, we never counted on building those into the operating, because exactly we knew that they would be a cliff. However, I think what I said earlier is that those positions right now, they were funded with, I think it was 2 at each school, have vastly improved our ability to, you know, enhance our programs, respond to where targeted needs for students are. And so when those ESSER monies run out, those positions will not, you know, be funded in the same way. We hope that we would have built more capacity for our staff to be able to respond, but data is always, you know, to analyze, that's always a need. And a lot of other districts have done worse than us. They've actually had permanent positions that are funded on ESSER. We're very conscious not to do that, but to say that we won't feel a withdrawal once those positions, you know, those data driven positions, even if you just had one, there will be a conversation of, you know, how do we build maybe one into the district, you know, or something, so we don't lose the benefit of all that, because the whole point is, right, is making improvement towards student achievement, right? And this has helped us, but every year we're going to have to tweak, what do we do, what's best. So I don't know.
This
anything
is
else?
totally, well, I
Yeah.
just want to say, this is not FinCom related at all, but just on this topic of, Isla, my daughter, she's in 2nd grade at Green Meadow, and she had extreme anxiety in the mornings going to school, to the point where she was throwing up, and it wasn't good. And we found out there was a specific 2nd grade counselor, and that every grade has a counselor. which I discovered a lot of other schools didn't have that. And I felt that was part of maybe some of the funding we got and the positions we were able to add. And it was such a benefit. And to this day, she's not motion sickness in the car, and she's not like, it just made a world of a difference for us. And I could imagine kids who went through COVID, those issues are going to last a while, you know, beyond a couple of years. And to have those positions permanent is going to be, you know, I think really important. So
We have, counseling has been some of the funding from ESSER. And I think in some way we were trying to retain as much as that as possible because of that. There was just a need
yeah,
for it. And I think especially the elementary school, there's post-COVID, there's a lot of trauma
Yeah.
that kids are, as they are being reintroduced, there's a lot of emergencies, I guess, that are that need responding to. So yeah, I mean, that's just the reality of it right now.
right.
All right, any other thoughts on that article at the moment?
And Alana, can I just add
Mhm.
one thing, because I don't know at what context or when it will be more broadly discussed, but what Brian and Greg had talked about was that circuit breaker money, and could that possibly at some point part of it go, because there's a special education stabilization account, and could possibly maybe 50,000 go to that, and then the remaining 200,000 go towards the operating budget. Wouldn't still meet exactly what we're looking at, but again, it brings us closer to part of that. Obviously, you know, and I know Greg has said this, you know, we don't ever really like to have to use free cash for operating budget expenses. But it for this year, it seemed as a possibility. I mean, he's even doing that for the town level for similar reasons as well. So I don't know how that conversation will eventually play out, but that was something that was brought up a little bit. He alluded to, and I know he was talking to Brian with at
Okay.
town
At the
budget
town
study.
level, you mean the $5,000 for library?
No, the
No.
free cash, there was 257,000 for circuit breaker.
No,
that
I know that, but at the you said at the town level, he was using free cash for operating, which we don't generally like to do.
Right, as $100,000 he has put towards like contracts that yet for negotiated or whatever. I forget how he's worded it, but it's in the free cash.
Okay.
Contractual
recommendation.
increases
Right,
that aren't
right.
in the budget. Yeah.
Okay. I knew there was something
I
with
can't
the
remember how he's
library.
worded it, but when he will say, he is the first one to say, like, I don't like to do this, but you know, this is what we have. And so again, I think we all agree
Okay.
that it's not a practice we would all think is a routine, but it might be a viable option for this year in some capacity. All right.
We can certainly talk about it, you know, in general, right, for a couple reasons. One, that we've already touched on, using free cash for operating, not a principle we like to do. Also, you know, the idea behind the free cash in general is at the end of the year, things that either aren't spent or didn't, you know, new revenues that came in that we didn't know, is then allocated to the biggest need for in, you know, any other place within the town. So I am reticent to say the schools didn't spend $250,000. So we're just going to give them back $250,000. If we did that for other, you know, other departments, that's not how free cash works. Like, it's not like the town clerk's getting that $500 back that they didn't spend and what have you. So just as a principle, I understand the argument, and I'm, you know, and I see what you're saying, but for me in general, that wouldn't be the conclusion I would draw for free cash. But I know that that's an area that we're looking at because it's one of the areas we have wiggle room in, for sure.
Yeah, and it wouldn't impact taxes. I guess that was also the other
Right.
part too. Okay,
Mhm.
thank you.
Jillian?
I think for me, on the sponsor comments of this article, if it's submitted, or I don't know if it's too late to do sponsor comments. I think it would be important for me to understand how the normal budgeting process with the town didn't work and why the school committee felt that this article was necessary. Because what if, the fire chief doesn't get the deputy chief they want? Should they also try a route like this, where they make an article about it and have the townspeople vote on it? I think
Yes, they
just
should.
speaking a little bit to that, I understand that. I think that that's really important, because some people might feel like this is sort of trying to jump the gun, or, push through an article to get a budget that you feel is totally necessary to get level service. I understand that, but I think understanding how the system broke down could also help maybe fix the system in the future if you think there's an inadequacy there.
No, Jillian, thank you very much. That's a
But-
very good point, and I certainly will bring that back to the board to figure out how that messaging can be incorporated.
Well, except I disagree. I don't think this is a breakdown of the system. This is the way the system is supposed to work. And if the fire chief thinks they need a deputy chief so much, they should be bringing forth an article. I think the process is we are allocating money that, we don't have enough money to allocate it everywhere we want. And the schools are arguing that they didn't get enough money. And however that plays out, I think they're perfectly fair to argue that. And again, the budget's supposed to be a town meeting document. Just because and it's not like the select board ever does anything with the budget. They just take Greg's recommendation all the time. So Greg came up with a budget on December 31st, and that's not the last word on the budget. We should fight about how we allocate this. And it shouldn't be Greg that decides everything. So I think this is definitely part of the process, perfectly appropriate. And, I think there should be more stuff like this. So anyway, sorry, Julian, but this is the process and it's good.
It would be, I'm trying to just follow that through if we did have multiple articles like this from various department heads, and where that would put us at the end of a town meeting.
Would that actually
It's-
have a conversation of like informing, like, hey, look, we have so many departments who are now underfunded, like that would maybe influence the recommendation for the override?
That is, that is possible. Yeah.
I mean, like
I-
the fire, I mean, I know, this is where when I was asked at the town budget, like, where do you get this from? It's really not the school department to, take away from this department. It's just more of a conversation at the town level. These are our like, how do we want to prioritize our services in our town? Do we want, knowing that these are all various needs in various departments? Is that something that we don't want to fund in what we're recommending? Or is it that we want to pursue them, as a town, to seek an override that hasn't happened in 20 years in Maynard? Anyway, thank you. Sorry.
Jillian, did you have another point, or your hand's still raised?
Oh,
Just
no,
check.
I just need to.
Okay.
lower my hand.
That's fine. I was just checking. So this actually leads into part of my, I think for tonight, and especially because we're down a couple members at this point, I'm not planning to like vote on any recommendations for the other warrant articles this evening. I think we will start that process more at our next meeting. So I'm going to move on, I think, unless anyone has objections, to some chair notes and comments.
Lana, thank you for your time and the
Yep.
board.
Because one of my notes about chair comments actually is apropos to this conversation. So I had a conversation with Select Board Chair Jeff Swanberg to discuss a possible tri-board meeting, which I believe was maybe talked about at the budget subcommittee meetings as well. And there are sort of two ideas on the table, if you will, concerning this tri-board meeting. One is that it would happen prior to town meeting with the general discussion agenda to be this situation with the school department and this article and the budget, their budget, etc. The other option would be to have a meeting shortly after annual town meeting, and the agenda would be specifically discussion around a override, an operational override discussion for FY25 and the process that would take, and if we feel like that is something to move forward with, so that it's more from the beginning of the FY25 budget process, because we feel like we've gotten to, some places later on in the process and thought, well, maybe, I don't know, but if we, really started before we all head off into, summer and whatnot, because it really hits hard once we get back into the fall, starting that process really right from the get-go to have the discussion for FY25. So those are the two ideas for tri-board meetings. And I said I would talk to my board and see what their thoughts are on those. So what are your thoughts on those?
Now, are your thoughts both or one or the other?
That's up for debate. So I will take all thoughts.
I'll certainly go, but I
You look like you want to
spoken a
talk,
lot
Peter. I
tonight.
see you about to talk.
I always want to talk. Well, that's not always. So I would advocate for the after town meeting,
Yeah.
With the topic of the override. And
Okay.
I hesitate to say the agenda should say override, but certainly some idea of some more long-term planning.
Yeah.
And, I think that a town meeting with a school article like this would actually provide some good fodder for discussion and, hear what people have to say.
Okay.
Also, in terms of the actual resolution of the school budget issue, if we even want to say that, for this year, I just don't know if the tri-board's all that helpful. Us sitting around is going to turn into, I don't know, it turns into criticisms of the school somewhat, and schools get defensive, and, I just don't think a big meeting like that is actually going to resolve this. I'm not sure we're coming to a resolution. It's, 500,000 is a big number. And, ultimately what matters is what plays out at town meeting. So maybe we should just let that happen. And, for this year, and maybe people do want to have bigger discussions about the budget. And, maybe you're trying to convince the select board to, find cut somewhere to fund the schools or not. Or, to not do that. I just don't know that it's really going to be that much discussion. I think smaller discussions would be better.
It's also a very tight
on that
timeline
topic.
and what we could accomplish. I mean, I do agree. It's at this point, where we are with annual town meeting, it is hard to find a time where the tri-boards could meet and then have that be productive for town meeting. So I hear what you're saying, and you may be happy to know, I don't know, that the select board is sort of on the same thought. They were looking for a meeting shortly after annual town meeting, before the summer holidays hit, and it's hard to schedule anything. So probably early June, I want to say.
Yep.
And
I would be in
have
agreement with that as well.
okay.
Oh, go ahead, Pete.
I know I'd like to hear what other people have to say. And also, if you're okay with it, Alana, and Natasha wants to, the only thing, if the schools are trying to use the meeting as a way that they're going to advocate for their budget, I don't want to take that away from them if they're really counting on that some way. It's not like I wouldn't go to a meeting, but so I'm just throwing that out there if Natasha wants to say something on that. But also, I don't know what other members of FinCom say, so.
Well, I mean, I would, I think anyone would be, if you guys want to have one of us back or, come back after you guys think about, more to ask more target, if you feel like in your meeting would be more helpful to inform your recommendation, please, by all means, I'm here at every meeting I can. I don't know if a larger conversation would move things forward, except for the fact that we're all operating under the same understanding. Sometimes when we have these offline conversations, I feel like not everyone has the same set of facts, and it can be a little confusing as far as where we are and what the direction would be. So that would be my hesitation in not having something beforehand. I'm not really clear about what rises up to the level of the town administrator. I mean, to the select board through the town administrator always. That's been a little questionable. So if people want school to advocate in any, I mean, we have no problem. We're going to be writing we will be writing a sponsor comments that does capture some of this to accompany the advocacy for the town and to inform the position of the school committee, along with providing appendix. So, but if anyone wants us to, come before the board at another time, please let me know.
Okay. So in general, we are definitely in favor of a post ATM tri-board discussion to kick off FY25. I can't believe I'm saying that already, but process. And possibly, should we think that it would be productive and helpful to have a meeting prior to ATM, specifically with concerns about the FY24 school budget, we wouldn't be opposed to that idea. Is that what I'm hearing?
Alana, can I just ask one
Yep.
thing? Because I know that aside from the school, there are other articles that do have possible implications on like future votes for the town, like the citizen petitions in particular. So I don't know, like they might have legal implications. It might be helpful for scenario playing, I guess, from that perspective. Like if this is approved, then what does that look like for afterwards? But I don't know when that type of meeting would be helpful. If that would be a joint or a collective meeting, because some of that
Can
might
you be
impact
more
like
specific?
the Green Meadow. I know it's not binding, but
After our submission, isn't it?
they're voting next month, I think, on the schematic plans, right? And
Yes,
then this recommendation is coming, this vote for town meeting is coming after that. So I don't know how that, we've all been part of the conversation, and so I don't know how that would play out.
Doesn't seem like it's going to have much effect.
yeah.
No, I know, I don't disagree, but I just thinking about the impact
Just
there.
timing wise.
Yeah. And
Well,
then
the code one could, though.
Yeah.
The code one
right.
could have impacts. The other one is non-binding in terms of the HVAC system, but should we adopt the stretch code, that is possible that it would have an effect on the Green Meadow building.
And then the other one to mention, which isn't an article, but it is a financial impact, is for the bleachers. I know Greg has mentioned it in a couple of meetings about potentially lumping the bleacher cost in the fall in an article with the Green Meadow building, but Brian received information recently that that's not allowable for the MSB. They have like a very prescribed, like you have to have a standalone article specific to the
Okay.
project. So, so I don't, again, all these are like a lot of moving pieces and that everyone has to process through. And so just, how do we map that out, that timeline of when each of those, on top of thinking about an override in the future?
Alana,
But
can
there's no
I ask a question about operating budget? I'm used
Sure.
to operating budget and capital budget. Now, Green Meadow is definitely a capital budget. That shouldn't be part of the school department budget, correct? Or is it done
Correct.
differently?
The
Correct.
Green Meadow building project is going to be funded with a separate vote item that will appropriate the money for that project on its own. It is not part of the school's operating budget for that
Budget.
year.
Right.
Yeah, so that's going to be a debt exclusion vote, which is we are voting to say, yes, we are going to take on this debt. And in order to
Mhm.
pay for it, it will be calculated on our everybody's tax bill.
And that's a town meeting or a, what am I trying to say? Is
It's
it
a town meeting and a ballot.
It's both.
It's
the
both.
ballot?
And both
Oh,
have to pass by 2/3 majority. So it's a big one.
Town
Right?
meeting is 2/3, the
Oh.
vote is 50%.
The vote is straight majority. Okay, so town
Yes.
meeting 2/3, and then it goes to a ballot box where it has to get a straight majority.
mhm.
And that we are expecting to be on the fall town meeting as an article. And then it will go to a ballot. Should it pass at fall town meeting.
Okay.
And then just to add the other question about the Green Meadow, because they are, right now, the select board is only 4 members. And so if there is not a consensus on the schematic plans,
Oh,
if that's
God.
divided, it
Oh,
fails. But I did ask Brian to find out if that's a required step, or was that something, how does that impact the overall trajectory of planning? Because I didn't know if it was more of we want to seek select board, recommendation on there, or do we need
No, I
to
think it's
select?
required.
So I don't,
it's
that's what
definitely, I mean,
are you sure? Because I
you're
wasn't
submitting on behalf
sure.
of the town.
Okay.
MSBA is
but I-
very specific. You should check the MSBA website.
Yeah,
on
I
that.
had-
They're
I had
very
Brian
descriptive.
ask, because I think it's the
Okay.
MSB, I think it's the building committee who has the ultimate authority on the schematic plans. But I wasn't sure because I realized after, like, again, they're not a majority. They could split and fail, not pass.
Okay, so a split is a fail. That's good to know.
That's bad. That's, yeah.
I don't know what that means yet, but I just know that they don't have 5, so.
Right. Okay, so I think I've got a good plan to toss back to Jeff on that tri-board idea. And that brings me to another thing on my notes here, which is the timing for the Green Meadow Building Committee. So their next meeting, I believe, is next Monday, in which, and Katie, you might know better, but they should be seeing some more estimates and numbers on the HVAC systems. They're going to have
Right.
all 3
Correct.
more detailed budgeting numbers for those. And then I believe the building committee is going to finalize their recommendation for the schematic design to send to the select board by the following week, by like the 27th. And then the select board is going to vote on the schematic design, I believe, on the 3rd or 4th of April, and that it's due to the MSBA like a couple weeks after that, maybe.
So soon.
I know, but I do want to just want to stress that is the schematic That is the budget that the MSBA approves with a schematic design. That is not the end all be all.
Yeah.
There is still time to
Mhm.
adjust some things in there. Can we adjust super major large things? No, but it's not, that's what we're voting on entirely. That's what's going to get built. So just to make sure
Mhm.
there is a little bit of take a breath, but it's big. This is big.
Like heating source has to be decided. Right? That
I
can't be
mean,
changed
well,
after the fact?
Well,
they were saying that if it was in the budget, if you budgeted for one and
Oh, right,
decided on
right.
another one that wasn't
Right.
gonna go above, that would probably,
Right.
that would be okay.
Right,
But you can't
Right.
budget here and then decide on this one.
right.
You can't do
Right.
that. You can
But
go
I-
in the other direction.
my sense I got was the schematic kind of establishes a ceiling.
Yes,
That if we
Right, right,
decided
right.
later,
Mhm.
you know, we can cut the gymnasium, we could probably could talk MSBA into, well, it's probably
Yeah.
required by law, so we can't. But if there was some later savings, we
Correct.
probably could do it.
yes.
We couldn't go
It is
bigger.
the budget that the MSBA is saying, yes, we approve of this amount of money to build this building.
Right.
Mhm.
So they won't go above that. But you can come below it.
Just gotta ask for it all. Mhm.
We don't
Well,
ask
except
for what we
that's then
can't
kind
afford.
of the project you have to go to town with. You have to.
Oh, right.
Right.
That's part of our,
That's the
We don't
counter
want to
not
ask
do
for
it.
more than we think our town meeting voters will grant to us.
Yeah.
whatever will equal a yes vote. Mhm.
So that's the timing on that. So the reason I bring that up is because I do think that we as a committee should have a look at those numbers that come out this week, and that we should have another discussion amongst us on that project before the select board votes and decide if we want to make a recommendation maybe and say we we support this project, or before the select board. I don't know. What do you think?
I agree.
I've never
when
built
is
a building before as a
board-
chair, so I don't.
When is
It's my
the
first
select
building.
board meeting? The,
They, I
This-
believe, are going to be voting on it on April 4th or 3rd. April 3rd, 4th is a Tuesday.
We have another meeting before that scheduled, though, don't we, on the 27th?
We do.
And
So would
Alana,
we,
that seems early for the select board. Is that, do you?
I
that's
can
so they
check with them to
delay
be
it
sure.
once, or, I thought the proposal wasn't due till the end of April.
Okay, maybe
At
that,
one
maybe
point,
the
they were
3rd or
gonna
4th
vote
is
the
when
night
they're,
before.
maybe that's when they're
They may be
getting,
discussing it.
yeah, maybe that's the first discussion and then the vote is the next one. I'll confirm that.
Yeah, okay, just,
Okay.
on the school stuff, I mean,
Mhm.
I don't recall that we formally weighed in on the high school until it was a town meeting article.
Okay.
I think certainly it would make sense to look at it. If there's something we, vehemently disagree with, maybe we express some opinion, but I don't see the need to, generally endorse the project. It's totally a recommendation. I mean, we could if people feel strongly about it, but I don't think the select board's looking for us to do that.
I don't think
Unless
they
Jeff
might,
said otherwise, but
no, I don't think, they certainly have not asked that of us, no.
Yeah.
It was more a thought of, moving toward town meeting, garnering support, having, I think some town meeting voters have looked to us for our opinion on it before they, so I see what you're saying,
it's
that
not a
that's a town meeting
question
thing.
yet.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we can wait. Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. Hopefully, yeah. So, but we'll take a look at what is given to the select board, and, you know, I think it's important to keep with this process at least.
That has come up a lot in conversation. I feel through this Green Meadow thing is, oh, well, what did the finance committee say? And then it was, well, you know, that wasn't a discussion. And then there seemed to be surprise there. So they're just not understanding the process, you know, that the committee is going through, and that's not our involvement. But I think a lot of people are under the assumption that we are involved more than we are.
Yeah, I mean, we have, there's a lot of processes in place, and there's different committees in place to do certain parts. And as a overall, you know, what are we charged with doing? Peter's correct. We would be charged with putting in our recommendation for town meeting voters.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that, you know, we shouldn't be following the process further back and doing more. But that is what our committee has to provide for the town. So we can talk about it once we have those final numbers, and then.
And I'm certainly not saying we can't say something. I
Right.
just, you know, be kind of lukewarm. Well, yeah, this seems okay to us. It's, you know, if there was something that we had a major issue with, I would certainly think we should say something. You know, I haven't seen it yet, so.
Okay. All right. So that was that timeline. And talked about that. So more, just a little bit more planning ahead for our schedule. So our next meeting is Monday, the 27th. And at that meeting, I have already scheduled the Assabet Valley Regional Schools Superintendent is coming to meet with us. This is a little bit later than they have in the past. It's bumping up to our town meeting planning a little bit. They were, you know, this is when they were ready to have the presentation, as Natasha had said that we had just gotten their numbers not long ago. So we have their meeting scheduled for, yep.
I'm just throwing it out there, but, you know, I don't know what other people think. Do we want to cancel them? Do we have enough time to sit through their thing? And from what Natasha says, and I remember seeing it when we were in the, I don't know, budget subcommittee or the town meeting thing. I mean, their number is up pretty good this year. I just don't know if there's anything we're going to do about it or really take on, you know, it's like $50,000 more than we had budgeted.
Yeah.
So it's not really big money. But is it worth an hour of our time with, you know, I was counting the files. It looks like 29 articles we have to deal with.
I agree.
So I'm just throwing it out there.
It is a lot. Did I forward their presentation?
We don't have to be nice to them. We don't want to hear from them. I'm serious. Sometimes it's just a formality.
No, I totally understand. And I am not one to have meetings for the sake of having meetings, just to say that we check the box, you know?
Make them earn that money. Come on, like you make us earn our money.
I knew you were going to be bummed.
I know. We know how many meetings we gotta have for 2.5%. You better make them under 6%.
Yeah.
I knew that was coming.
It would definitely be, you know, we could change the conversation a little bit instead of having, you know, a long presentation of the slides that we have been given. We could maybe change it up and say, we've been given the slides, we've looked them over, and come back with thoughts, questions, what's the deal with this increase in that way, and sort of, you know, curb the conversation and the length.
I don't know what other members think. I'm curious if how many where people want to devote their time.
Yeah. No, I agree. We do have a lot to do, and it is a little later in the process than it normally is. We could also,
Give them a deadline. Tell them you have to do it within an hour and 15 minutes, and then 15 minutes
oh yeah,
for
we should definitely,
discussion.
less
Oh, an
than
hour
that.
15 is too much.
Yeah, I won't give them that
Yeah,
much.
10 minutes.
Okay, well, I'm just saying, give them a deadline, give them
Yeah.
a time. That's hard to do.
The only other thing, I'm just looking at the scheduling. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really make any sense to have them come in after town meeting, I guess.
If helpful, I think I would be interested in hearing about the Maynard students and what needs that they're seeing, changing in the demographics. Because I know Assabet was the only school last year from a VOTEC that changed their enrollment process as well. They went into a lottery. I don't know if that's helped or hurt them, but from a budgetary perspective, it might be interesting to understand.
Okay. I think we will just put some real bookends on it.
Okay.
We'll keep it tight, Peter. We'll keep it tight. All right.
Yeah, and I want to hear from them too. It's just,
No,
I'm
I get
looking
it.
at all
I
those
totally get it.
articles thinking, oh my God.
Yeah, I know. I hear you. I hear you. So yeah, I will send a message with a specific request, and we'll keep it to that. Because we
If
also,
I can,
yeah,
if we said, the big thing would be to get them to say, can they do a 5 to 10 minute presentation only?
right.
And that'll be the part to cut down.
Yeah, we'll ask them to cut it back. Okay, so we have that on the agenda for next time, and then depending on what some of the responses I get with some of the articles that we've already discussed, and if we end up having some other people join us, I will let you know for that. We'll also likely take a look at the Green Meadow building numbers that come in this week. So that's going to be a pretty big meeting as well. So, and we will start going through these articles. I was going to ask Peter if you, because you were such a great, helpful member of the Charter Review Committee, if you would work on the comments for the Charter Review articles for us.
Oh, fine. Yep. But they're going to be what I said. There's nothing major.
Yeah.
Clarified.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah. Maybe just tweak each one a little though. Don't say that like the exact same thing 5 times. Like actually speak to what that article says.
No, that's what the sponsors' comments are going to say that. There's no reason to repeat the explanation of the article if the sponsors' comments. I mean, I know Bill is going to explain very well what each thing does.
That's true. He will. All right. Well, I would love that. If you could write up those sponsor comments for us.
I can cut and paste.
Thank you.
Sorry.
And I think that's it for the notes I had for chair notes. I want to thank everybody for coming to that meeting last Wednesday. I think it was really helpful for us to hear. Also, I wanted to let you know, as I showed you the Finance Committee section in Board Docs, there were some questions submitted that I forwarded to the chair of that board, but I didn't forward all of those to the Finance Committee at large. They are all on the meeting from last week in correspondence for that meeting. And so if you want to read some of the questions that were submitted, they were most of them, and I thanked everybody for them. I forwarded them to the other chair, but there were just so many emails and things flying that to
Oh
send
my-
you all those I thought was gonna drive you insane. But they're all in
Wait,
board docs.
Are they all about the heating system, or is there anything else? 'Cause, you know,
They're not
just
all about the
generally.
heating system. There were, yeah, there were several about the environmental aspects for sure. But there were also some process questions. And again, most were answered during the meeting, I would say. But some were about how we came to the design of the building. So they're all there
Okay. Wow.
under correspondence. I could certainly forward them all, or if there's any that you want, like in email, I will send them to you. But it just, with all the articles and everything else, it was just like, oh my gosh. And they all came in within like a day or two, so it was a little much. So they're all there. And that's where you can find them. Okay, I think that's it for chair notes. I do want, as Peter and I have mentioned, there are a lot of articles for this town meeting. This town meeting is kind of a lot because we have the charter, which is not a normal thing to have. And we've got a lot of, budgeting concerns, obviously, that some citizens petitions. It's just a heavy town meeting. So it's possible we may need to look at an additional meeting for us. I would imagine that would probably be April 3rd. So just to go over a little bit more of the timeline overall, we are charged with submitting our whatever is going to be in the written warrant from the FinCom, which is our recommendations and our FinCom comments, by our April 10th meeting, by the end of that meeting. However, if we cannot make that, we can put comments and recommendations in an additional, usually it's a flyer or something when you come to town meeting that's not in the printed warrant. This happens frequently. Timings are tight. Sometimes it's just really hard for us to get it all done. However, in my mind, especially, I believe it is much easier to navigate town meeting for town meeting voters when everything is there in one place in the printed warrant. So I certainly would like to get as many done as we can by that printing deadline. So we can discuss after our next meeting on the 27th if we feel like we need an additional meeting before that deadline. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. And then just so you all know, we will be having our public hearing for annual town meeting on Monday, the 8th, which is a normal, it's nicely falling on a normal FinCom meeting time. Our public hearing for annual town meeting is where we invite all town meeting voters, anyone who would like to come, and we go through the warrant. We go through every article. We allow for questions. We try to, answer as best we can and get everybody that comes or listens after more informed on what they're voting on. So that will be the 8th. All right, so I think that's all I have. Other member updates or comments? Katie, I think we've hit your boards pretty good.
I was gonna say, we've talked most about all of my meetings, so
Yeah.
I did cite, we had a bylaw, was it bylaw? We had a bylaw, am I on the bylaw committee? The
Yeah.
other committee I'm on, we had one this week, and I was maybe 15 minutes late to signing on and it was already over. So they forwarded me the minutes for it, which I will catch up on for next meeting.
Okay.
I don't think there's much to it.
Yeah. I used to be on that committee too, so I
Okay.
understand. They ebb and flow a lot. Sometimes there
Yeah.
isn't much.
Yeah.
Yeah, Khadijah? You're on mute.
Yeah,
There you go.
I have a quick question regarding the Summer Street, 61
Mhm.
6163 Summer Street. So when the art space vacates the space,
Mhm.
some money will have to be spent to put a security system or I don't know what. I don't know who would actually be, whether it's the town or who, but some operating money is going to have to go to keep the building from falling into ruin and being taken over by errant teenagers, until it gets developed. So
Mhm.
is that something we allocate funds for, or the town requests funds for, or?
That would be likely. It definitely is one of the problems with holding on to
Mhm.
buildings. We had some trouble with that with the Coolidge School
Yeah,
building, some vandalism and things over the years. It's definitely something that the police chief will be informed of, I'm sure, when it's vacant. And they will likely step up, some patrol around it. And I don't know exactly what the cost is going to be for what they decide to do. So I guess that will be something to consider. But yeah,
Mhm.
hopefully
Yeah,
it
I
it
mean,
is a
I,
concern. Go
I
ahead.
haven't heard of them altering FY '24 budgets for it. I mean, I don't think the cost would be that great. I imagine they'll handle it out of the regular DPW budget or something.
Okay.
It may result in a reserve fund transfer, which I don't know if Alana's gone over that with you but there is some money that the finance committee has and can allocate towards emergencies, if
Okay.
if there's a request. It may come up that way to us, but I suspect it's not that much money that they can't fit it in a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Anything else from other members? All right, then let us go through some minutes, which I thought I had open, but I don't think I do. Give me 1 second. Thank you, Katie, for sending these 3 to get us all caught up.
Sorry, they were all together at the same
All right.
time.
They're all together and done. That's the important part.
It's a lot of meetings.
All right,
Mhm.
I'm gonna pull them up here quick and we can take a look and then. All right, so these are the joint budget review, which I can't believe is about a month ago now. Whew,
Crazy.
time flies when you're having fun. So these were sent around, and if there's any discussion or changes, otherwise I will entertain a motion.
I'd move to approve the minutes of the joint budget meeting from February 11th. 11th.
Okay, do I have a second?
I will
I
second.
second.
Oh, I
Oh,
beat you,
Khadijah's first
Khadijah.
second. Give it to her.
It's all yours. It's
All
your
right.
first one.
Any
All
further
right.
discussion? All right, then I will do a roll call vote. Khadijah,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Katie,
Yes.
Jillian,
Yes.
all right. Excellent. And let me grab the next ones. These ones are from our last FinCom meeting, just FinCom meeting. So many joint meetings. All right, so these are the minutes from February 27th meeting, where we
This was
spoke
a long
with,
meeting.
yeah, we spoke with Chief Noble and Chris Arsenault. Oh, and Justin, right?
Yeah. DPW.
That's, yeah, DPW, that's a long meeting. And Khadijah, just, I will point out, this is the reserve fund at the bottom. We started with 250 granted as reserve fund in annual town meeting budget. And then we have so far had a request to use 50,000. That was from actually at this meeting, that was from the DPW for additional fuel. The DPW has a gas station at Winter Street that fuels all the town vehicles, and cost of fuel went up. So they asked for that amount and we granted it. So we now have a balance of 200,000.
Okay.
So any,
Did I, I'm sorry, did I,
Yep.
the votes in the minutes here? Didn't immediately notice it. I wasn't at this meeting, so.
sorry, which vote?
Oh, there's.
Oh, for the reserve fund, yes,
Yeah, it's
okay.
in number.
right here.
Okay, yep, okay.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
Just double checking.
Yep. All right, then I will entertain a motion to accept.
I'll make a motion to approve February 27th FinCom meeting.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. And we'll do a roll call vote. Khadijah,
Yes.
Katie,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes,
and Jillian.
Yes.
Okay. And one more from our meeting last Wednesday, the joint meeting. And this one, you know, was mostly a big discussion meeting. So they are a little more sparse, but that's totally fine, I said to Katie.
I know I made a note that I just was having a hard time catching up on all the conversational notes. So
Yeah, you know, when it's
made it
right, when
general.
it's back and forth and there's no voting and there's no, you know, minutes really,
wait,
really
I don't
just-
see my comment in the minutes. I made a comment at that meeting.
You did.
did?
You did. It was a good one too. So sorry.
I would make a motion to approve the minutes of the March 8th joint meeting.
All right, second.
I will second.
All righty. Any further discussion? Then roll call vote. Khadijah,
Yes.
Katie,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
Jillian.
I will abstain as I was not present.
Okay. And I'm a yes as well. That is an option. It is not required. You can just for our new member, Khadijah, you can approve minutes even if you weren't at the meeting, but it's up to you.
As I just did.
Right.
I watched the video.
Okay, so excellent. So that is our minutes. I jumped ahead when I did chair member updates. Sorry. Minutes should have come before that. But they're done now. And we already had updates from members and chairs, and we'd already talked about some future meeting agenda planning. So I would ask that everyone try to familiarize yourselves a bit with all of the articles, as there are a lot. As I said, they're all up on board docs. If you have particular questions, feel free to send them to me. Or if there's and then if I feel like we need to ask a staff member or something to answer that question, I can do so. And we will forge ahead next time with starting to go through them, voting our recommendation and doing some comments. And that's where we're at.
Can
10
you
o'clock.
pretty please forward the list of articles when you get that?
Yes.
Yes, yes,
Thank you.
indeed. All right, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
All right, do I have a second?
I will
I'll
second
second.
motion to adjourn. Ah, Sorry,
Okay,
Peter.
all
No,
all
that's
those in
fine.
favor, just give a wave. It's good.
Yeah.
All right,
Right.
thank you all so much.
Right.
Have a good
Good night,
evening.
All right.
Night
Good
all.
night.
Good night.